Welcome to the conversation. We're gonna have a conversation about climate change. So we're literally going to be talking about disaster. The degree of the disaster is frightening, given the report that came out on Monday, saying basically we're all gonna die. Well, that is true. We are all going to die, not super immediately, but close. All right, we're gonna get into the details, give you the actual facts behind that. To help us do that, we're gonna bring in Dr. Shweta Chakraborty. She is the US president of We Don't Have Time. Well, that appears to be the God's honest truth. And she's, of course, a climate change expert. Welcome. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Cenk.
No problem. So the IPCC report came out on Monday, and it says pretty much we're all screwed. First thing I want to start with, though, is so it was 195 countries that participated in this report. And they reviewed 14,000 studies to come to the conclusion that climate change is definitely real and definitely, they said, quote, unequivocally man-made. Okay, now those are very strong statements, thank God. Why have all the scientists in the world decided to lie in unison?
Yeah, we've been saying it for decades, but what was so unique about this report was the language that was used, the one that you just quoted, unequivocally human-made and caused. And that's really important because that means that because we put this ball into motion and we're here in terms of these increased and simultaneous and frequent and intense impacts of climate change that we have co-created alongside what is underpinning natural impacts of climate, we can also change it. We can correct course. That's why it's so important to really emphasize that this has been human caused, but it can be human solved. So even though climate change is here, it's at our doorstep, we can also act on it. And there's this really critical window of action that can keep us to below 1.5 or 3 degrees Fahrenheit before the end of the century. And we need to see that happen and that conclusion be fulfilled from the Paris Accords that was put together 5 years ago. And we know now is the 6th year, and the upcoming COP26 is going to do kind of well, let's do a temperature check, no pun intended, as to where we are now from the original Paris Accords. But ultimately, the goal of this report is leading up to COP26 to ensure that we really don't get past that maxed out temperature, global temperature warming by the end of the century.
Okay, but Dr. Chakraborty, I started around by asking, sarcastically, why are all the scientists in the world lying? Because the problem isn't that we don't know what's happening. 99% of the world's scientists are not lying in unison. That is absolutely insane, right? They're not changing the thermostats across the world. There's no reason why an Indian scientist and a Brazilian scientist and a Russian scientist would all agree to lie at the same time. That's insane. Yet, in this country, we are not taking action. So who's really the insane ones? And so my point there is, isn't this really not a science problem? Like every scientist agrees, if you jump off a tall building, gravity is real and you will die. It's just that we have politicians in this country, not just Republicans, but Democrats apparently don't believe the scientists, so they're dragging their heels. And so how do we fix a political problem when the fossil fuel industry has successfully done propaganda to manufacture doubt?
I mean, you said it better than I could in terms of what's going on here. We have the technology, we have plenty of technologies in the pipeline in addition to what's already part of our solutions toolkit to address these climate impacts, but we need the political will. And we need to bring Biden's Build Back Better agenda, the climate agenda portion of it, into fruition. We need to see this reconciliation bill have all the clean energy standards that are going to be required to meet this target. That is going to keep us to that under 3 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. And we need to do that, especially by ensuring we get to clean electricity by 2035. And that's just one thing that the US can really pick up and take a lead on, because once the US takes action, we're going to see other countries follow suit. That's what they've been waiting for. That's what was the hesitation during the Trump era. But now with Biden back in the driver's seat, we can really see the leadership come back for this climate agenda, because we do need all these countries to act. And no, the scientists across different countries are not lying in unison. The idea that anybody would think so is as akin to thinking cigarettes won't cause lung cancer. That's how sure the science is. We know the science is that we are polluting the planet to the point where we are going to have a collective cancer. And if we don't really urgently act and change our collective human behaviors and change the trajectory that we're on, we know exactly where we're going to find ourselves. So it really is a political will question, and we are really at this critical juncture in American politics to see the policy we need come through.
So in case some of the viewers don't know, the last 5 years have been the hottest on record since 1850. So again, not in dispute, constantly hotter and hotter and hotter. And the recent rate of sea level rise has nearly tripled compared to between 1901 and 1971. The sea level rise is so frightening. We'll get to that in a little bit. But let's now keep it real. So the reason that those politicians aren't acting is because they're bribed. They're bribed by fossil fuel companies. We call them campaign donations and independent expenditures and dark money, but none of that makes it any better. There's still a bribe. ExxonMobil wants to make money. They bribe both Republican and Democratic politicians to make sure that we don't take any action. So now the scientists called for, quote, deep rapid cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. So if we're keeping it real, doesn't that mean that we've got to fairly quickly end fossil fuel companies altogether? And that's why they're fighting like tooth and nail, because it's their profits on the line, it's their existence on the line.
Yeah, and it's really short-sighted ultimately, because there's no one that is going to be isolated from these impacts of climate change. Even the greediest and wealthiest and those that are in these industries are going to feel the impact. So it's really, even if we just think about it from, okay, let's say that it truly is a short-term monetary gain that is continuing to facilitate this pollution of our planet, it doesn't make sense in the long term. And that just goes to show how short-sighted these individuals and these companies are. And unfortunately, there's no room for these industries to even continue business as usual. We have to urgently end any sort of subsidies to oil and gas companies and to those who enable oil and gas companies. And we need to incentivize clean energy. And we can overhaul sectors and we can create jobs. And the hardship that these disinformation campaigns continue to propagate by saying that there's going to be pain for Americans and more broadly if we stop these industries from continuing business as usual, that's truly disinformation. We have to fight that. That's not true. There's a better, cleaner, healthier future for everybody if we transition in a thoughtful, transparent way to clean energy. And that's what we need to aggressively put out there through the media and other channels to ensure that people know, the end recipient of this information knows that it will be better, maybe a little more painful in the short term during the transition, but overall have that longer view, because we're talking about our collective futures here and the futures of our families. There's no future where oil and gas continues as is.
Yeah, imagine if we said, okay, look guys, let's be fair, these oil companies, they are making a lot of money and there's a lot of jobs on the line here. And so we're gonna continue pressing this button. By the way, the 10th time we press the button, all the nukes go off and we all die. And we're like, I know, but those guys need jobs. Let's keep pressing the button. No, we're like, you're not getting it. Okay, so that goes to the sea change, literally. So apparently the very conservative estimate is that the sea levels will rise by half a foot by 2100, right? And now we're only 80 years away or 79 years away from that. The non-conservative estimates say, well, if the glaciers in West Antarctica collapse, it'll be 6.5 feet all across the world. So I don't get it. All of our cities, not all of them, but a lot of them are built on the coast. I'm asking a literal question, I really don't know. Would they just, like, does it literally rise half a foot or a foot and a half and New York is underwater?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna vary depending on exactly where we're talking about, but places like Miami, for example, are really vulnerable because it's a limestone core underneath the city, which is like a sponge. And so when you have sea level rise, you have water coming up from literally from below the actual city itself, which destabilizes infrastructure, which contributed to that collapse of the building that was covered in the press. And so these are the kinds of things that you would anticipate happening more in cities that are built, especially on vulnerable, not concrete like Manhattan, but places like Miami that are built on limestone. And most of civilization is built along the coast. It made sense for maritime economy, transportation, all of the things that we actually really require and have come to enjoy. People love being along the ocean fronts, but that doesn't mean it's going to be something that we can realistically enjoy forever. We need to be really practical about what we know the numbers are and prepare for those worst case scenarios.
All right, Dr. Chakraborty, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody check out We Don't Have Time. Well, now it's appropriate in a couple of ways. And thank you for fighting back. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
We'll see. We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby.
You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it. We will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good boss.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip into Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always change this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change. All right, back on the conversation. We've got an interesting guest for you guys. Now, Amanda Litman is the co-founder of Run for Something. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Cenk. I'm so glad to be here.
No problem. Amanda, what are we running for?
We are running for everything. Run for Something works primarily with young progressives running for local office all across the country. And since launching in 2017, we've identified nearly 80,000 young people who want to run for things like school boards, city council, state legislature, the building blocks of the democratic process.
Okay, I'm super interested in that because I started Just Democrats, which helps people do it at the federal level. But I always thought that you need an organization that does what you do. But let's fill that out. So let's say I'm rando progressive in Wyoming, okay, and I want to run. Okay, where do I go and what do I do?
Great question. So you go to runforwhat.net, you enter your information, you look up the kinds of offices that are available to you in 2021 and 2022. You join a conference call, you talk to one of our volunteers, then we will help you figure out everything from how to get on the ballot to how to get the voter file to what to do once you actually have the voter file in hand, how to talk to voters, what to talk to them about, all the way through to election day. You can apply for our endorsement, and if we endorse you, we might give you some money, some volunteers. We'll connect you to other candidates who are running across the country, and we'll take you all the way through to election day. And afterwards, we'll help you figure out either how to transition into governing or how to wind down your campaign.
Okay, you said almost 80,000. I see the number here. It's 77,348 people that were prospective candidates. You can't do that for all of them. That's crazy. So help me understand, like, what's the process? Like, it can't be that you help all of them do all of that. You guys would have to have like $1 trillion to do it. So yeah, help me understand.
I wish we had $1 trillion. No,
Me
so
too.
It's a bit like a normal marketing funnel. We have as of this morning, we're up to about 79,000, so pretty close to 80K who signed up on our website. About half of them have joined a conference call. About half of those folks have had a one-on-one with our volunteers, and those people are admitted to our pipeline and are getting, everybody who signed up is getting regular resources and information and materials about what running for office might be like. The reality is that the idea from thinking about running for office to actually getting on the ballot can take a couple of years. It's not something you just jump into. It's a big career shift for most people. So we know that people who signed up with us back in 2017, many of whom are just now actually getting on the ballot. Our endorsement process is where we really dig in with folks. And we've endorsed in the lifetime of the organization about 1,700 folks across all 50 states, mostly women, mostly people of color. The one thing that does make Run for Something really unique in this space is we only work with people under the age of 40, and we only work with first-time candidates for local office. So it's a very distinct scope of work for our program.
Well, that's really interesting. And is there any issues that you guys, you said progressive, so how do you define that? Let's put it that way.
Well, we have a broad set of value statements we want every candidate to abide by, pro-choice, pro-equality, pro-tolerance, pro-diversity, pro-working families, pro-unions, pro-immigration reform, pro-reducing gun violence, pro-actually doing something about climate change. But the reality is because we work in all 50 states and because we work for a range of offices from city councils and state legislatures all the way down to like coroners and library boards, we don't really have space to have a litmus test on clear policy positions. What we hope is that candidates who share our values will show up in those rooms and those city halls and act on those values in a way that we can align with.
So Just Democrats had only one litmus test, that was no corporate PAC money. Do you guys have a similar one or no?
No, we're really looking for people who are running strong grassroots-driven campaigns. I would say it's pretty rare that many of our candidates are taking corporate PAC money. They're just not getting engaged in the level of offices that we work on. But it's not something we hold people to or against. What we really need are candidates that are running strong, positive, grassroots-driven campaigns that are really engaging with voters on the issues. Everything else can really be taught or learned or negotiated throughout the process. But if people are really engaging with their voters in a meaningful, genuine way, we trust that they're going to be in the right place for their communities.
When did you guys start this?
We launched on Inauguration Day in 2017, so just about 4.5 years ago.
That's amazing. It's almost exactly when Just Democrats launched. Okay, that's great. So you said you've endorsed nearly 1,500 candidates, and how many have won?
So we have elected 515 people across 47 states, mostly women, mostly people of color. And we expect that number to increase by at least 100, 150, because we're gonna have about 300 candidates on the ballot this November.
So when you say you helped to elect them, did they go through this pipeline, or do you also endorse people that did not go through this pipeline?
Everyone we endorse has gone through our pipeline. So the people that we track wins and losses are the folks that we've endorsed.
Jesus, that's an amazing group. You help.
Yeah.
They actually try to figure out how to run through you guys. You taught them how to run, and 515 of them won.
Pretty cool, right?
No, that's not pretty cool. That's amazing. That's really cool. Okay, so hold up now. This is, what are you, like the best kept secret in America? Okay, so when you say help them win, okay, you told them the basics, and that's really important. Nobody knows the basics, like getting the voter file. Nobody knows that, right? And so what is the voter file? What do you do with it? That's already super important, right? But then when you're running, God, you know, especially for a slightly bigger office, you need a campaign manager, you need all that, you need money. So of the 1,500 candidates, I keep wondering if you guys have $1 trillion. You couldn't have given all of them money, right? No, you didn't give all of them money.
No, we gave very few folks money. You know, we've slowly been building up over the last 4 years the infrastructure you need to invest locally, because we don't do it in federal races, we have to really work around each state's campaign finance law. So we've given out some. We've probably given out or helped raise a couple $100,000 over the last couple of years. But the big value add we have for people is community with other candidates, people they can ask stupid questions to for free, and really making sure that they know that there is a network for them that can help them. You know, you're familiar with this. Running a campaign is much like running a small business. It's why we have so many like small business incubators and VC companies that help get founders off the ground. Candidates need that kind of backbone infrastructure support that is not quite money and volunteers and not quite advertising, but is really an advisor you can go to and say, I don't know what I'm doing, please help me. And we have heard over and over again from our candidates that kind of support has been invaluable. The other thing we've heard from people over and over again, and in fact, in a debrief survey we did in 2018, 60% of candidates told us that a relationship with another candidate was their greatest source of resiliency. Running for office is terrible. It's super lonely. It's really hard. And especially if you're a young person running somewhere outside of a big urban center, you probably don't know very many other people like you who are doing this. So we make sure to connect people to each other and to folks who've run before, so you can really build what I think is becoming a nationwide movement of young people running and leading and serving and making a difference in a way that is revolutionary.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I continue to be amazed by this organization because that is a giant number of wins. And so they're getting some information from you, they're getting some from the forum, and including fellow candidates. By the way, the reason the squad exists is because those are 4 Justice Democrats that had known each other when they were running and leaned on each other when they were running. So that's why when they got into Congress, they were the squad. Now, Katie Porter is a great progressive, but wasn't in Justice Democrats. So that's why she wasn't in the squad, because she wasn't in that group that was leaning on each other. So that's why I know from personal experience, it makes a giant difference that you've set up that network that supports people. Now, of the ones who won, they still had to have had very little money, generally speaking, I would guess, and had just learned it from you guys, and they're all first timers. So what was the sense you all have for what's the most likely route to success? What did they do that you think got them the wins as opposed to others?
Out hustle their opponents. One of the things we really look for in candidates is people who are willing to work hard, knock doors, make phone calls, talk to voters, and connect with them in any way possible. Our candidates regularly will personally knock anywhere from 5,000 to 25,000 doors themselves, depending on where you are and the timing of your race. The pandemic sort of, create a little exception here. But what we have seen over and over again is our candidates, especially the ones who flip seats, who win districts that go red to blue, are the ones who are out hustling their opponent. They often get outraised and outspent because they often get underestimated. But they are tenacious, they are connected. They also really understand the voters that they are trying to engage in a way that I'm not sure their opponents, or I guess the results bear out, their opponents do not.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, if the smaller the race is, the more knocking on doors and working hard will make a difference. That's why I now counsel people, don't try to go, federal level's too hard. Like, there's some wonderful people that can do it, and that's the whole job of Just Democrats, to find those people, but trying to knock on 750,000 doors is too hard, right? But at a local level, you really can do it, and it can make a big difference, and other people helping you can make a big difference. So I love what you guys are doing. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Cenk.
hold on. We're gonna get to it, okay? And media reaction is hilarious. We've got 1,000 stories for you guys, obviously leading with Andrew Cuomo and his resignation, but tons and tons of stories, including a word, in my opinion, not based on my reading of the stories, what is actually going to happen with infrastructure and budget bills. So mysteries solved tonight. I mean, that's what we do. We solve mysteries.
We solve mysteries, that's what we do.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Detective Kasparian, over to you.
All right, well, I can't wait to talk about the infrastructure deal. Because it's the one thing where, for some reason, the press won't report on the things that actually matter about that bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we're gonna give you the nitty gritty. But first, we begin with Cuomo.
The best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing.
That is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing that he intends to resign following all the fallout from the the state attorney general's report indicating that he had sexually harassed 11 women, 9 of whom he worked with. And of course, there are a bunch of other pretty devastating controversies that he's been embroiled in, including the fact that he made decisions that led to nursing homes spreading COVID, and he led to the death of elderly people, which no one in the media is talking about right now. But that's also a controversy that should be considered when it comes to his decision to resign. But Cenk, I feel like you're gonna press something. Are you ready for it?
Oh yeah.
Are we ready for it?
You ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Cuomo. Down goes Cuomo. Down goes Cuomo. Look, guys, we're gonna give you a lot of details here, and one of the things I want to preview for you guys is how complicit the media was, because that's written all over this story, and especially on the issue of corruption. And of course, we didn't get him, he got himself, and these brave women came forward, which led to more women, which led to the investigation. It's not like the media uncovered it in the first place. They're now part of a dogpile. But on the other hand, there's some members of the media that are defending him today and talking about his political comeback.
Oh, poor Cuomo.
Okay, I mean, they like him so much, etc.
Such a good guy.
But from a progressive perspective, we always knew he was corrupt. We proved it, we had receipts. We showed it to you over and over again. But every time that a progressive ran against Cuomo, Cynthia Nixon or otherwise, the press would come and go, how can we help you, Andrew Cuomo? We hear you're corrupt, how can we help you? How can we help you? So they are his major accomplice in the crimes that he committed and why he has stepped down today. So if you're a progressive, it's a great day in America today.
Now, he would claim that he's stepping down for the good of the nation, for the good of the electorate in New York. And he does it while speaking to people in a very slow and condescending way, as if we're all morons. But nonetheless, here's more of his comment.
I work for you, and doing the right thing is doing the right thing for you. Because as we say, it's not about me, it's about we.
No, it's definitely about you. And he also decided to lean on his 3 daughters during this announcement, which honestly made me cringe, but maybe you feel differently about it. Let's watch.
In many ways, I see the world through the eyes of my daughters, Cara, Mariah, and Michaela. They are 26 and 26, twins, and 23. And I have lived this experience with and through them. I have sat on the couch with them, hearing the ugly accusations for weeks. I have seen the look in their eyes and the expression on their faces. And it hurt. I want my 3 jewels to know this. My greatest goal is for them to have a better future than the generations of women before them. It is still in many ways a man's world. It always has been. We have sexism that is culturalized and institutionalized. I want them to know from the bottom of my heart that I never did and I never would intentionally disrespect a woman or treat any woman differently than I would want them treated. And that is the God's honest truth. Your dad made mistakes, and he apologized, and he learned from it.
So just to give you all a sense of just how much he respects women, as I mentioned earlier, the New York State Attorney General's report detailed that he had sexually harassed 11 different women, and then proceeded to attempt to discredit the women as they came forward to detail the allegations against him. Very similar to what Weinstein did against actresses who he had abused and raped. In this case, we're talking about sexual assault and sexual harassment among his own employees, aides who worked for him. And that's not to say that it's the only controversy he's been embroiled in. There's a new controversy now that Ronan Farrow reported about, which I'll get to in just a second. But let's not forget that he's the one who forced nursing homes to take elderly patients who had tested positive for COVID. That spread COVID within these nursing homes. A ton of elderly people died needlessly. And then his administration turned around and underreported the number of deaths by as much as 50%. That's who Cuomo is. These aren't just mistakes. These are intentional decisions that he made that led to people dying and led to people getting harmed.
So I actually thought the way that he used his daughters there as political cover was absolutely disgusting. So he said, "Oh, I saw the hurt in their eyes." So sounds like they don't even believe you. If you didn't do it, why would they have hurt in their eyes? So, and if you're gonna talk to your daughters about what you did and apologize, why are you doing it on national TV? Why don't you go do it at home? You're doing it on national TV because you'd like to use them as a political prop. You're disgusting. So he's always been disgusting. It's just now the media has flipped from helping him to, oh, I guess he's not going to be in power anymore. Let's pretend to be honest journalists. All right, speaking of which, we go back to corruption.
Yes, exactly. So first, let me just note that the person who will be stepping in after he resigns is the Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, a fellow Democrat, and she will serve the rest of his term when the resignation becomes effective in 14 days. So he did give his 2-week notice, very kind. She will become the state's first female governor. Now, there was other Cuomo-related news today in the form of new reporting from Ronan Farrow. This was published in the New Yorker, so check that out for the full piece. But here's what we learned about the possible obstruction of justice that Cuomo was involved in. So in a previously unreported 2014 episode, Cuomo called White House advisor Valerie Jarrett to complain about then US Attorney Preet Bharara and his investigation into Cuomo's shuttered Moreland Commission probing political corruption. In fact, he told Jarrett, quote, "This guy's out of control," and even said, "He's your guy." Jarrett claims, and she was a top advisor to Obama at the time. She claims that she hung up the phone immediately once she realized that Cuomo was trying to get her to intervene in that investigation, and immediately reported it. But the public didn't know about this until today. That is a serious offense. I mean, if Democrats are going to talk about Trump's obstruction of justice, and he did in fact engage in obstruction of justice based on the Mueller report, they should be equally upset and enraged that there was obstruction of justice taking place in 2014 with Cuomo and this investigation.
A really important point here, guys, and it might relate to why Cuomo resigned today. I mean, we had all these charges, and well before this, the investigation came in, concluded he was still fighting, but he steps down today after the Ronan Farrow piece. Is it related? I think it is partly related. Why? For 2 reasons. Number one, he realized this isn't going to get any better. It's actually getting worse. They're uncovering more and more of my crimes. Jesus, if I stay longer, maybe they'll find out what a complete criminal I've been from day one, okay? But there's a second hidden part of that article that you should know about. Valerie Jarrett is one of Obama's top friends, let alone ally and advisor, okay? Valerie Jarrett would never give an on-the-record quote if it wasn't Barack Obama throwing Andrew Cuomo under the bus. So if you had asked Valerie Jarrett before these scandals broke about the corruption issue that is being reported by Ronan Farrow, she has that same exact information. I guarantee you she would not have given you an on-the-record quote. She would have protected another corporate Democrat. So she goes on the record with Ronan Farrow. Why? Because that's Obama signaling the establishment is done with you. Now you got to move along, okay? And so Cuomo gets that message, oh, I have no allies left. Biden's not on my side anymore, Pelosi's not on my side, and now the Obamas have left me. So I'm toast and I gotta go. Understand how that game is played.
Yeah, I mean, he had no friends or allies left, and I think Obama made the right choice. I mean, that report detailing his sexual harassment of 11 different women is damning. What I do find fascinating, though, is that the Democratic establishment wasn't willing to abandon him as soon as we learned about the details of Cuomo's administration intentionally misrepresenting the number of elderly people who had died in nursing homes based on the decisions that Cuomo made.
Yeah, and guys, to my point, though, Valerie Jarrett and Barack Obama knew that all along.
Yep.
They never revealed it until now. So I'm glad they revealed it now so that we can get rid of Cuomo, right? But they would have covered up that corruption to the end of time if they didn't think Cuomo's now damaging the Democratic brand, or more specifically, the corporate Democratic brand. I mean, if Cuomo keeps this up, progressives might win in elections, or the media might take the other side seriously, God forbid, right? So I'm glad that they're throwing him under the bus. He deserves to be there, but remember that they kept it hidden this whole time about the corruption that they definitely knew about.
Well, there's another angle to this Cuomo story that I think is worth discussing, and it has to do with the people gallivanting around town pretending to be good guys when in reality they were aiding and abetting Cuomo all along. So, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York has stepped down. He is resigning following a state attorney general's report indicating that he had sexually harassed 11 different women. Now, he was involved in other controversies that probably weighed into his decision to step down. But now we're learning about people within his orbit, individuals who present themselves as fighters for the powerless, who actually aided and abetted Cuomo, even when it came to the issue of sexual harassment. So one of those people is the co-founder of the Legal Defense Fund for Time's Up. Time's Up, of course, is the organization that is supposed to be protecting women and representing them in cases of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the workplace. Now, Roberta Kaplan, the chairwoman of Time's Up and the co-founder of its Legal Defense Fund, was one of several prominent figures whom the report, and I'm talking about the New York State Attorney General's report on Cuomo, found to be involved in an effort to discredit one of Cuomo's alleged victims, and she has continuing legal ties to Melissa DeRosa, a former Cuomo aide accused of leading that effort. So the woman that we're talking about here is Lindsey Boylan. And so once it became clear that she was going to speak out against Cuomo and his sexual harassment, that's when all of a sudden the media had access to her files from Cuomo's office, and all of a sudden you see this effort to publish an op-ed letter that's signed by a bunch of people within Cuomo's orbit, speaking to what a great guy he is and how Boylan is full of it, basically. That was the point. It never got published, but Kaplan provided counsel to DeRosa for that op-ed letter that was never published. So in the meantime, she's working with Time's Up, pretending to be this warrior for women's rights and equality, wanting to represent the best interests of women in the workplace who may have been abused by their bosses. But then at the same time, she's providing legal counsel to DeRosa within Cuomo's office and giving them advice on what they should do to help discredit one of the women who came forward with sexual harassment allegations. So in a letter she wrote, unfortunately, recent events have made it clear that even our apparent allies in the fight to advance women can turn out to be abusers. We have felt the raw, personal, and profound pain of that betrayal. I'm not sure who she's referring to. It doesn't seem like she's referring to herself, but she should be, because she's the one who betrayed women in providing legal counsel to another woman whose whole effort was to discredit another woman for coming forward with allegations against Cuomo.
Yeah, guys, again, here's something you don't usually hear, because all these people know each other, they're friends with each other, and oftentimes work in close coordination, even if it's not explicit, hey, you write this and I'll write that. So a lot of the bigger Democratic nonprofit groups are totally working for corporate Democrats like Andrew Cuomo. So the idea that they would hold them accountable is oftentimes a total joke. No, they're in their back pockets. And Rona Farrow wrote a great piece about Andrew Cuomo's corruption today. And in that piece, he talks about how Cuomo would pull different levers of power. One was the press, because the press was totally in his back pocket. If he ever wanted to smear anyone, he's like, oh, I'll just go to mainstream media. They work for me and they'll help me destroy my political opponents. But the other lever of power was, well, are you going to be able to get a job, not just within the Democratic Party, but within the broader circle of Democrats? So for example, there was a female prosecutor that was looking into corruption in Cuomo's administration. And he threatened her by saying, basically, you'll never work in this town again. And by this town, in this case, it doesn't mean New York, it means Democratic circles. So when you have powerful allies at groups like Time's Up that are supposed to hold you accountable, but meanwhile, they're aiding and abetting you, yeah, then it's not just that you get cover from them, which is already bad enough, but it also sends a message to everyone that's working under you. You better not cross me, because of my powerful allies, your career will be over. Now, at the same time, I don't want you to blame Time's Up in its entirety. Understand this is one person that was working there, and she's no longer there, and the others are scrambling to say, no, it's not us. And I am making a broader point about be careful of these giant democratically aligned groups in DC, because they are not at all independent.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, the important takeaway to this story, right? It's not about one individual person, it's about a broader point regarding, this necessity or this perceived necessity for these nonprofit organizations to come in and hold powerful people accountable or to protect workers. You see it happen over and over again where they claim to be one thing and then they present themselves to be something completely different. And if you want to provide workplaces that are where equality prevails or where workers are treated fairly or treated right, you empower the workers. You don't rely on like some third party nonprofit organization to come in and do the work for you. Like it's just, there's always gonna be a breakdown of the system if you do that. But she's not the only one. Let me give you more details on what she did. So the op-ed letter that I was referring to was part of a broader effort in which Cuomo and his aides sought counsel from former administration officials, including Alfonso David, that's a name that you should remember, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ political lobbying organization in the country. Then there's Tina Chen, the chief executive of Time's Up, and the governor's brother, Chris Cuomo, an anchor on CNN. So they're reaching out to all these different people trying to get them to sign that letter because that's what would make it more effective. But apparently the president of Human Rights Campaign, Alfonso David, didn't end up signing that letter. However, he considered it and he also offered to find former employees who worked for Cuomo to sign it in order to help bolster that letter. And we're also learning some more details about David. He was part of Cuomo's tight inner circle, serving as his chief counsel from 2015 to 2019. The New York Attorney General's office found David appeared to have played a significant role in Cuomo's efforts to discredit his accusers. The report states, for example, that David provided a confidential file to Cuomo's top aides, which they used to discredit Lindsey Boylan.
So you understand what he's doing? He doesn't want his fingerprints on it. That's why he doesn't sign the op-ed. But he gets a whole bunch of people that potentially worked for him and owe him favors to go and support Cuomo. Meanwhile, he's conferring with Cuomo on how to bury these women who Cuomo sexually harassed. And look, a lot of these so-called women's groups, LGBTQ groups, from time to time, they do great work. But they're also used by corporate Democrats to attack progressives all the time. So now in this case, they're not attacking progressives, they're attacking victims of sexual harassment, but it's the same machine. It's built to attack.
Yeah, exactly.
And Cuomo gives the orders. Okay, you pretend they're anti-gay, you pretend that they're sexist and misogynist, while I actually do those things, and then you're my Praetorian Guard and you protect me. So that kind of power structure built up within the establishment Democrats is grotesque. And this is not the only case of it happening. They protect their own in a giant way. And unless the dam is completely broken, of course, the third basically co-conspirator is the mainstream media.
Now, the Human Rights Campaign has decided to hire an independent investigator to look into David's role in all of this. He has refused to step down. So unlike Roberta Kaplan, he has decided to remain in his position pending this investigation. There are some board members within that organization who are trying to get him to step down, but he's refusing to do so. I should also note one other thing, because it's important to know exactly what he's accused of doing in the Attorney General report. The report also states that David was involved in discussions about calling and secretly recording a conversation between a former Cuomo staffer and another Cuomo accuser named Caitlyn, who has not provided her last name. Caitlyn claims that in 2016, the governor grabbed her at a fundraiser and put her into a dance pose for photographers. She said the governor had his staff reach out to offer her a job 2 days later. So she's one of the women who Cuomo's office was seeking to discredit. Apparently, according to these allegations, David, the president of the Human Rights Council or campaign, offered to help with that. And so, look, we'll see how this investigation plays out. But if I were him, I wouldn't wait for the investigation. I would step down. It's that Attorney General's report is pretty damning. And if he's, if they found through their investigation that he did this, if he offered his assistance in discrediting victims of sexual abuse and sexual harassment, he has no right to serve any position that claims to protect human rights. Come on.
And David's gonna apparently fall back on the defense of, no, I was a senior counselor to Cuomo, but golly gee, I had no idea what was going on at any time. Now you say you didn't know that he grabbed the breasts and the other private parts of these women. Okay, that might be true, okay? But you didn't know who Cuomo was, that he uses power to intimidate others, whether they deserved it or not. Look, again, it's not just about political opponents, and it's not even just about sexual harassment. In the Ronan Farrow piece, there are 2 women who are leading up an investigation, the Moreland Commission, that's about corruption. And when they start to look into Cuomo's donors, Cuomo uses the same exact network to crush them and to not just attack them in the press, but to basically say, I'm going to ruin your career if you expose my corruption. So he's been doing this bullying and intimidating tactics throughout his whole career. Anybody who's a senior advisor to Cuomo that pretends not to know that is the biggest liar I've ever seen. Of course you knew that's his MO, that's how he operates, and you probably loved it and participated in it, especially it was people who are actually trying to do good in the world, that were anti-corruption, that were trying to fix things, right? No, you guys in power love how things are broken and how it keeps you at the very top. So of course now he's pulling a Cuomo and trying to stay where he is. And by the way, if he stays in power, he'll probably attack the powerless again and again and again, because he'll think, oh good, I got away with it. Now I'm going to seek vengeance against my opponents that were trying to seek out justice. No, we're not in favor of that. Anyway, again, it's not even about David. A lot of these groups act in the same exact way. So be careful who you give money to. These people basically work for corporate Democrats and will do anything to keep their power.
When we come back from the break, we'll give you an update on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which did pass in the Senate today.
This is no time to act stupidly. This is no time to act stupidly.
All right, back during the social break here. We're kidding around off air. Shadows writes in, I just realized how much I missed hearing that from the soundboard. We got him, woot. Indeed. Happily Vax writes in, Cuomo should resign for that resignation video alone. Fair point. Little Mac McGee writes in, Cuomo sounds like a complete dirtbag. So bad he makes Chris Cuomo look really bad as well for letting him get away with it. You can't tell me he had no idea. P.S. This is why I only donate to TYT approved places. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And by the way, when we ask you to donate to other places, we ain't got nothing to do with them. It's just we're doing that service that you're talking about, which is, look, we looked into it best we could, and they look like they're really good guys that are trying to help progressives, right? I'm not sending you to giant groups that funnel tons of money against our own interests. Anyways, in terms of Chris Cuomo, look, I don't know. Like, he obviously knew some things. I would hope he didn't know others, but it is what it is. You guys make any call you like on that. I don't know what to think because I don't know what he knew. So, new members on YouTube, Ben Barreto and Kedge Dragon, thank you, we appreciate it. Hit the join button below, become an American hero. And speaking of heroes, Michael Goldman on Super Chat makes a really interesting point, not about the news today, but he wrote in, a big shout out to former TYT hosts Emma Vigeland, Ken Klippenstein, Hassan Piker, and Nomiki Konst for building their own successful brands without trashing the network after they left. Others, who shall not be named, could learn from them. Indeed.
You need talent to be able to do that.
Oh, good point.
You need talent. You need to be willing to read also.
Yes. Knowing the news helps, those kind of things help, but yeah, like.
But what do we know? We're just corporate Democrats.
Yeah.
We're just paid shills.
Yeah, what I love is the new thing where they're like, day after day as I attack the corporate media and corporate Democrats, they're like, oh, isn't this ironic? I'm like, maybe after 4,000 days in a row, it's not really ironic, you just might be wrong. Maybe you misunderstand the word. Anyways, but look, those folks are incredibly talented. That's why they don't need to rely on gimmicks and attacking former friends to make an extra buck. Also, they're not dirtbags, unlike some other people we know. All right, I am out of time. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I just want to do a quick thank you to Abelina Sabrina, who was on the power panel on Friday and just did a raid of us on Twitch. And again, being the boomer that I am, I'm always like, raid is a good thing on Twitch, where she sends her audience to us. We appreciate it, you're the best. All right, Casper.
All right, let's talk about the Senate. So, the Senate has officially passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which approves $550 billion in new spending on physical infrastructure. Now, I'll detail what's in the bill. I'll detail, more importantly, what's not in the bill. But what's fascinating about this is at a time when Democrats and Republicans seem like they can never work together, a lot of Republican senators voted in favor of this bipartisan deal, which should be a red flag more than anything. So the bill passed by a wide bipartisan majority of 69 to 30, with 19 Republican senators voting for the bill, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. And so what enticed Republican lawmakers, the same Republican lawmakers who are in favor of tax cuts, deregulation, corporate giveaways, why would they vote for $550 billion in new spending? Well, it might have to do with the fact that there are some corporate giveaways here, which I'll get to in just a second, but let's talk about what it does fund. It invests $110 billion in roads, bridges, and major projects, $66 billion in passenger and freight rail, $65 billion to rebuild the electric grid, $65 billion to expand broadband internet access, $39 billion to modernize and expand transit systems, and $7.5 billion to build a national network of charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. That's probably my favorite provision in the bill so far, including what I'm about to read, which is that the bill also includes $55 billion for water infrastructure, $15 billion of which will be directed toward replacing lead pipes. So the water infrastructure is, of course, incredibly important. So there are good things in this bill. I don't want to take away from that. However, we should also focus on what this bill does not include, and more importantly, the corporate giveaways that are involved in this legislation as well. Now, while you have this bipartisan group of senators celebrating bipartisanship, just want to give you a quick excerpt from Ben Burgess's piece in Jacobin, where he writes, "The gap between Biden's initial infrastructure proposal and the bipartisan bill is a catastrophe in human terms. What it has going for it is bipartisanship." And let me take you to this graphic, which shows you what Biden's initial proposal looked like and what the bipartisan deal looks like. So obviously there's quite a bit of cuts in everything from innovation. There's no spending on innovation, no spending on in-home care, no spending on improving buildings. There's some money there for utilities, transportation, and a very small amount for pollution. And of course, not nearly enough to deal with climate change. Now, to give you more details, the original bill had $387 billion for housing, school, and buildings. The bipartisan version has zero. The original infrastructure bill had $400 billion for home and community-based care. The bipartisan version has zero. Even clean energy tax credits, an absurdly inadequate response to the climate crisis, plummeted from $363 billion to $0. But guess what this has going for it? Bipartisanship and selling off public infrastructure to private companies, which we'll get to in just a second.
Yeah, so we told you yesterday on the show that we'll see if, how Washington is going based on how they vote on the $3.5 trillion bill that used to be called an infrastructure bill, but is now being called a budget bill. And that got split out of this because that has most of the Democratic proposals. This is basically, the one they're talking about here is basically the Republican version of the bill. And so that's why it's being celebrated in Washington. But we said, look, maybe there's some chance the Democratic version will pass. Normally I tell you there's no way, but the jury's still out on it because people like Nancy Pelosi to Bernie Sanders are so adamant that it's going to pass. So, the thing that we added was, but we'll be able to tell partly in media reaction. So today we have our first important data on how the media is reacting. So when you read the CNN piece, it's not to blame these particular writers. Understand that the writers are generally speaking irrelevant. There's groupthink, and the editors tell you how to write the stories. So they're all written in similar ways in all of these articles. So how do they frame this Republican version of the bill and how do they frame the Democratic version of the bill to give you a sense of which way the media is going to push, okay? And if you think the media doesn't push, you're hilarious. So this one is framed by CNN, for example, as historic and sweeping. Now, they took, I know these because in fact, I told you that they would call it historic. And it's because I've lived this movie before. Barack Obama, when he did the incredibly weak financial reform bill, the corporate media called it historic.
Dodd-Frank. Yeah.
Right, and so here they are again, and it says, these are all quotes, shore up the nation's crumbling infrastructure. Man, that sounds like it's really needed, which by the way, it is. Like I'll take all of this, except for the part that Anna's about to tell you about, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the other one. We should also definitely do the other one, which is more, which is bigger and also desperately needed and would actually shore up our crumbling infrastructure. They again describe it as a wide bipartisan majority. If you just saw that by itself, that's true, but it's in the framing like, oh, that's a really positive thing about this bill. They say the legislation stands to modernize and upgrade the nation's aging and outdated infrastructure. It was not quite described this way before they had agreement, because before they had agreement, the press couldn't tell, wait, are the powerful going to do this or not? Now that the corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans have agreed, CNN thinks this is the most important bill that's ever existed, right? They say it was done after months of painstaking negotiations. These guys are heroes. They say it's a rare example of successful deal making. Now, again, if you just saw that, you say, well, the bill has a lot of good parts that they seem like they're recognize that, no problem, right? No, they're framing it in a way of so that when progressives say, hey, if you don't pass the $3.5 trillion one, we're gonna vote no on this. Then this same press turns around and goes, they're preventing historic reforms. We need to make sure that our crumbling infrastructure doesn't fall on our heads. And it's the progressives that won't let you have it. Guaranteed, mark it down in stone, okay? And then, okay, well then how are they gonna frame the $3.5 trillion one? A little bit further down the article, they say it's a separate and more expansive package. Again, by itself could be okay, but then they go on to say, but expansive is like, this one is bipartisan and reasonable, the other one is expansive. And they say and they explain that Democrats in the House might not vote for it, might not vote for the bipartisan version if they don't get this version. And they said that's, quote, a stand that has been met with criticism from Republicans and pushback from some moderate Democrats. In other words, that is not the reasonable one. No, this Republican version is the reasonable one, and that's the one we should go with. And that's how this game is played. Okay, back to you.
Yeah, but so for progressive lawmakers who inevitably will deal with that mounting pressure to vote in favor of this bipartisan deal in the House, even without a clear path forward with the $3.5 trillion reconciliation version of the bill, they need to understand that they got elected to represent the best interests of their constituents. CNN didn't get elected, an editor at CNN didn't get elected. If they're gonna serve as the PR wing of the White House or PR wing of the Senate, let them do what they're gonna do. But lawmakers need to understand what they got elected for in the first place, and they've made their commitments on national television. AOC on national television said, we're not voting for this bipartisan bill unless there's a clear path forward for the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, claimed that she will not bring the bipartisan bill to a floor vote unless there's a clear path forward for the reconciliation bill. I don't really trust Nancy Pelosi much, but I will say she's not the type that says something like that unequivocally. And so it seems like she intends to follow through on it, but I also, of course, would argue that we should proceed with caution. It's Nancy Pelosi, and if she gets a little bit of pressure from the Biden administration, I have no doubt that she'll cave. But I also want to go to.
I'm sorry
Go ahead.
to interject, Anna, but it also could be a trick by Pelosi that it might not be caving. So like she says, I'm putting my foot down. So it's all in how the media spins it, right? So then later, if she says, well, there's nothing I could do, I had to at least pass something, then they will probably paint her as not wishy-washy and flip-flopping, and she didn't get a priority through. My guess is the corporate media will then say, what a statesman, like this person, what a master legislator, sacrificing her own priorities to get the bipartisan version through.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Look, the media is gonna do what the media is gonna do. We know what they're gonna do. We know it. They've done it a billion times. And the Affordable Care Act, this reminds me of the Affordable Care Act. Let's keep it real. Affordable Care Act had incredibly important provisions. There's no question. Allowing 26-year-old people up to the age of 26 to stay on their parents' insurance, doing away with the ability for private insurers to turn people away if they have pre-existing conditions. These are important provisions. Just like some of the funding here for infrastructure is important. However, let's not make any mistakes. This is a corporate giveaway. The reason why Republican lawmakers in the Senate are in favor of this bill is because their corporate donors are in favor of the bill. So there's a portion, it's literally thousands and thousands of pages long. But the part that I cared about the most is they're not raising taxes on the wealthy. And they claim that, Democrats specifically claim that they want to make sure that they have pay-fors set and ready to go. So what are the pay-fors? Well, there's a portion in the bill that talks about asset recycling, something that we covered in detail on this show. They're going to privatize public infrastructure. And when they do, these corporations who are leasing our infrastructure get to implement tolls and fees, and it ends up becoming a tax on the backs of working people. Now, there's a part in the bill, the way that it's written now, indicating that these entities are not allowed to implement tolls or fees toward those who make less than $400,000 a year. But there's no enforcement mechanism in the legislation. What are they gonna do? Are they gonna stop cars and say, oh, how much, can I please see your tax returns? Make sure you're not making more than $400,000 a year. You know, we don't wanna implement a toll that could hurt you. No, come on, it's ridiculous. There's no enforcement mechanism, none. They're gonna privatize infrastructure, that's what they're gonna do.
So there was another portion of the bill that had a gas tax. And so the Republicans said, well, of course we don't want to tax the rich, that's an outrage, right? But let's tax the average American, make sure they pay more money in taxes. That way, that's a higher percentage of their income, and it really crushes the average worker. But for CEOs who are our donors, the gas tax doesn't affect them at all. They don't care, right? So now the Democrats did take that out, so credit where credit is due on that. But apparently, they kept in the part about privatizing things, at least to some degree, and then cover it up with, don't worry, we will not charge tolls for people making under 400,000. Come on, guys, you know that's comical, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's ridiculous.
There is no toll machine that tells people how much money, that tells the government how much money you're making as you're driving by in your car, nor should there be. Okay, and so that's absurd. And by the way, we have a petition on this, tyt.com/petitions. You go there and you'll see it. It's saying, hey guys, don't fall for this trick. And why do I talk so much about the media? Because it's the media that go and lean on progressives. Hey, just only do the Republican version, only do the Republican version. Our petition says, do not do that. Stick with your promises and make sure that you're voting on both in the House. If they vote on this one first, it's the only one you'll ever get. You'll never hear the $3.5 trillion one first, ever again. If they vote on the $3.5 trillion one in the Senate and send it over to the House, and the House votes on it first, great, then no problem. Then I say vote yes on this, and then do a new bill. You guys are Democrats, you're in charge. You could do a new bill saying, kidding, we weren't privatizing.
They're never gonna.
I know they're never gonna.
Yeah, I mean,
do
that's
that.
like the most utopian,
no way.
fantasy world ever. But no, I mean, and by the way, one final, just this is trivia, but I think it's hilarious. The provision where they talk about privatizing public infrastructure is, they titled it asset concessions. So, you know, the government, it's engaging in asset concessions to corporations who will then manage that infrastructure and charge you money for using it. Asset concessions.
Why do we have to make concessions?
We don't. There were no concessions made by massive corporations and banks when they got money from the Fed because they needed liquidity. There was no nickel and diming there. Okay, there was no discussion about taking their assets and handing it over to the American people as they were being bailed out. So I think it's fascinating here that we're having a discussion about asset concessions to corporations who just want to nickel and dime the American people for using infrastructure that used to be public, that was already funded by taxpayer money in the development of that infrastructure. But now corporations can make money off of it if it becomes privatized. I think that progressives should fight that provision even if they agree to vote for the bipartisan bill.
So one of my favorite quotes is from a local progressive, California, Eric Olson, who said about the supermajority that Democrats have in California, why are we still negotiating? We have a supermajority, we don't need to negotiate with Republicans. It looks like we're negotiating with the donors instead. And that's exactly what's happening here. Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the White House. They're not negotiating with Republicans, they're negotiating with their own donors and having to give concessions to them when they didn't need to give any concession at all to corporations.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a little trip to Florida where Governor Ron DeSantis is threatening school administrators if they implement mask mandates. We'll be right back.
All right, let's go to Twitch first. Eldermind Pulse gifted 50 subs. That's amazing. Man, that's so consistent, so wonderful. Crump the THC Dragon, already enjoying that. Not right now though. Gave 1,000 bits. Miss Courtney wrote in, a year of Twitch, TYT's gotten me through a lot over the years, but the last one has been a doozy. Unfortunately, that is very true. Dragonstar Watch just joined with Prime, or has been with us for 13 months, I should say. TYT.com/Prime to figure out how to give Jeff Bezos money to a good progressive organization like us. And Bradshaw Crew just says, hey now. Eddie O'Donnell says a couple of days late, but 11 months. Love it, Eddie. K-Town SK and Check-In gifted 2 subs apiece. And Depressed Progressive always lifts our spirits, and he gifted a sub. All right, we've got a poem and a haiku in the YouTube super chat. Franklin Sharp Slicer with the poem. Chim chimney chim, chim charu, no other can do what you do. Jankanana, Armenia's jewel, no one can trick you and make you a fool.
I like that one.
Okay.
I don't know if Jake's Armenia's jewel though.
No, I think he's got to squeeze in the poem. He's got to squeeze it in, of course.
People are saying that Anna Kasparian
is Armenia's jewel. They're saying it.
Kind of a
he just said
person.
it. He just said it. We didn't say it. Okay, and then I'm going to go to Peter Hamby for the haiku. Andrew stepping down. No Cuomo in New York. Victim of Me Too.
Are you guys writing us poems?
They're literally writing poems. Is that blue I see? Okay.
I love it.
John Weber, just with an interesting question mark. AOC for governor of New York 2022? People are asking. No, by the way, I don't want that. Honestly, I mean, God bless you for the people of New York, but we need as many progressives as possible at the federal level to have more power and votes and leverage at the federal level, because that affects all of us. That's my take on it. But not that anybody's asking.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. New American hero Jeff Gates just joined by hitting that join button below. We should change the name from join to hero. Okay. And then speaking of which, we go to one of our members who's a hero, Tommy Too Strong, writes in, thanks to Nomiki Kon's appearances on TYT, I've known for years how deplorable Andrew Cuomo actually is. And I never joined in elevating him to hero status. I was one of the watchers on the wall who hired Nomi. Well, I love that. You see that? Look at all these amazing people we've also put out into the world, right? Nomi's been telling you about how terrible Andrew Cuomo is for years. She was right all along. She was right all along, and you helped to hire her, right? Ken Klippenstein, another guy you helped to hire, who's doing amazing work now at The Intercept, did it at The Nation, exposing the deep state, if you will, over and over again, actually doing great work in exposing the problems with our intelligence officials, let alone Haas and the others. All right, we'll be back in a second. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Casper, forward.
All right, let's take a little trip to Florida. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is threatening the pay of public school administrators who implement a mask mandate. Schools across the state are reopening for in-person learning, and Ron DeSantis, much like Donald Trump, seems to have some incentive in keeping his own constituents unsafe, including children and teachers. Now, a spokesperson for the governor said, quote, ultimately, education funding is for the students. The kids didn't make the decision to encroach upon parents' rights. So any financial penalties for breaking the rule, and mind you, breaking the rule in their mind is forcing people to wear masks within the schools. So any financial penalties for breaking the rule would be targeted to those officials who made that decision. Let's hear a little bit from Governor Ron DeSantis himself and his reasoning for this.
The legislature passed a Parents' Bill of Rights that I signed into law about a month and a half ago and laid down the law in the state of Florida is that parents have the fundamental right to raise their children, their health and well-being, and that has to be respected by the state at all levels of government. Particularly for young kids, many of these kids, by the way, have recovered from COVID, and so there's really no scientific justification to put it on at that point. What are the harmful effects of putting a kindergartner in a mask for 7 hours? Have they talked about the emotional, the academic, the physiological? Why isn't CDC studying that? They've had a lot of time to do it, but yet you don't do it. And to act like somehow that this is just something that we shouldn't worry about, I don't think is acceptable. So I think the fairest thing to do is just say, let parents make the decisions.
Let the parents make the decisions, which I would typically agree with, except for when the parent's decision has a negative impact on public health. Because with a virus that can spread, community spread, it's a little bit of a problem, especially within a school where you have children who are not vaccinated, right? So the whole point is to stop the spread of COVID, to keep people safe. And unfortunately, while it's still true that children are less impacted, even by the Delta variant, we're starting to see an uptick in young children getting hospitalized with coronavirus. So this is just an effort to stop the spread of COVID from one person to the next within a school setting. But apparently Ron DeSantis has a difficult time understanding that because this is his culture war issue of choice, even as people in his own state are suffering as a result.
Well, what we have is a battle between DeSantis and Abbott in Texas for who's going to take the mantle of the most extreme right winger because they think that's going to help them run for national office. And so now, funny enough, the two states that are hit the worst are Florida and Texas. Why? Because they're led by guys who are prioritizing a slight political advantage for them. And look, I keep, for the last couple of days I've been saying I'm trying not to be too harsh on Republicans, but voters, but it's hard because they know that in their primaries, whoever is the least intelligent, the least rational, the most conspiratorial is the one that's gonna have the advantage. They know that. I'm not calling DeSantis and Abbott dumb. I think that they know exactly what they're doing.
They know.
Yeah, they're perfectly happy and willing to sacrifice the lives of their own voters so they have a slight better chance of winning maybe a presidential primary. So DeSantis knows that if he's okay with any kind of mask mandate in Florida, that they're gonna bludgeon him with it in a presidential primary, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you're thinking, how could that be? Especially if you live outside America, it seems unbelievable. I'll give you a couple of stats. So right now, over 500 unvaccinated people dying every day in America, right? Almost everyone who's dying is unvaccinated. And they keep telling them, what's the big deal? What's the big deal, right? Oh, this mask mandate.
But did you know that if you're vaccinated, you can still spread the virus? Did you know that?
Yeah.
I mean, you might not. You're very unlikely to die, but did you know you can still spread the virus? So what's the point? What's the point? You don't die. That's the point. You don't die.
So
you don't take up space in hospitals to the point where people who need to go to the hospital for other reasons get turned away. That's what happens. That's what happens when you get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So in Texas, we'll get to that in a second. They're asking for doctors outside of the state to come and help because it's so bad. But meanwhile, no, screw the mask, screw the vaccine, right? In Florida, it's an epic disaster. It's now the worst in the country. By the way, there's 135 kids in the hospital right now in Florida from COVID. So they're less likely to get affected and they're less likely to die. But it doesn't mean that they don't get affected. It doesn't mean that they are not exposed because they don't have the vaccine. You can't give the vaccine to kids under 12, right? And so, and here's DeSantis saying, I don't care. I demand that you endanger your kids. So because he's not, it's not that the state is debating whether to do a mask mandate or not. He's saying you are not allowed to do it at the local level, even if cases are raging out of control, even if you have kids in the hospital in your local neighborhood. Republicans claimed that they were in favor of local control for the communities all of these years, right? Now he says, no, I'm taking that away. you're not allowed to decide for your own community or for your own kids. I'm going to endanger them no matter what you think because it's gonna help my political ambitions.
I mean, what level of catastrophe linked to deregulation will convince Floridians that they're going in the wrong direction? Like, how many condo buildings need to collapse? And how many Floridians need to be hospitalized and die before they take things seriously? That's what I want to know, because it's one thing for things to kind of be like abstract arguments, right? Like, people love thought experiments, people love abstract arguments like, oh, what if, what if? No, this isn't what if. You're seeing it happen right in front of you. You have children hospitalized, you have people dying when you have access to a vaccine that'll keep you alive. That's the point of the vaccine, it keeps you alive. I wanna repeat that because people don't seem to get it. They're like, well, you can still spread it. Yeah, you can still spread it, that's true. You know what stops the spread of COVID? Wearing N95 masks. That stops the spread of COVID. So we have a system in place, a very simple system in place, where you wear a face covering and it prevents the spread. And if you're vaccinated and you happen to experience a breakthrough infection, the likelihood of you being hospitalized, the likelihood of you dying is drastically minimized. I don't know why it's so difficult to understand these things. Now, again, I think you're right. Ron DeSantis knows the truth, but it's disgusting and it's sick that he has decided to latch onto this as his campaign thing, right?
Yeah, and
I too do not care about the lives of my constituents, and Floridians love it. They love it. They eat it up. They eat it up. Now, I would be fine with it if Florida were an island, but it's not. It's connected to the United States, and so we have to deal with it. And I know. Don't blame the voters. Don't judge them. I'm judging them. I don't care. I'm judging them because they're specifically leading to unnecessary deaths in the country. Let me give you this headline. Florida requests 300 ventilators from federal government as COVID cases keep rising. Governor DeSantis says he isn't aware of that. That's a local ABC affiliate in Florida reporting that.
He's like, what am I, the governor? I'm totally unaware that we're in an absolute emergency, a pandemic of epic proportions, and Florida is leading the country. Oh, by the way, right wing, you guys said that Florida was such an outstanding example of how to deal with the pandemic. You just sit there and do nothing. Oops. No. How'd that turn out for you? Leading the country.
Wake up, Florida, wake up. How many of you need to die? How many of your family members need to die before you brush off this goon who's only looking out for his political career? I'm sick of it. I'm done with it.
So for those of our, one more thing here. For those of us who are vaccinated, and that's a lot of us, by the way, in the country now, about 71% of the country has at least one shot of the vaccine. And by the way, one shot already puts you in really good shape, okay? So guys, think about what that means. That means we're raging right now in coronavirus. It's almost the worst it's ever been. January was the worst. November of 2020 used to be the second worst. Now this new wave is even worse than the November wave. So it's the second worst wave we've ever had, okay? But it's happening almost exclusively within just 29% of the country. So for it to equal the wave that happened when none of us were vaccinated, that means inside that 29%, it is raging completely out of control, unbelievably out of control. There's 108,000 new cases every day in America. That's a stunning number, and it's almost all unvaccinated. So these are your own voters. Guys, so now if you're vaccinated like us, your survival rate, even if you get coronavirus, is this is literal, 99.999%. Okay, so generally speaking, you're gonna be fine. But the kids are not vaccinated, that's problem number one. Problem number two is there's immunocompromised people that are vaccinated and that are still at risk, cancer patients, etc. And number three is if enough people do not get vaccinated, more variants pop up, and a variant might pop up where the vaccines we have don't work. Oh my God, then we would have to reinvent a whole new vaccine, and the entire country would have to shut down again for a year or 2 years. You idiots, Anna, you're getting me to say it again. We don't like the mask either. We don't want the local restaurants shut down either. We want to be able to go to a movie, goddamn, and put on a mask, or even better, get vaccinated so we can move on from this goddamn thing.
No, it's at this point, I give up. I give up. No, there absolutely will be another mutation. that the vaccine will not be able to withstand. We're gonna deal with these shutdowns on and off over and over again. This process is gonna drag on for years to come, Because people who abide by a billion different laws somehow think this one thing amounts to government control and control over your life. It's a dictatorship, Joe Rogan said, a dictatorship. Who exactly is the dictator? Do you know how a dictatorship works?
Yeah, what benefit do we get out of it? What benefit does Biden get out of it? If anything, it hurts the economy and it hurts his own record. Why would he be in favor of that?
Biden as a dictator. It's the most hilarious thing in the world.
It's absurd. Meanwhile, the other guy actually tried to end democracy and asked his Justice Department and his vice president to basically declare a dictatorship. And you think doing a health precaution, oh, don't take an Advil, that's dictatorship, okay? But ending democracy, no, not dictatorship. Absurd. In Missouri, they now have 30 ambulances stationed across the state because they know they're in an absolute panic. In the weekend, they got to get ready and they got to maybe get people out of the state because the hospital beds are taken. But are they going to encourage them to put on masks or get the vaccine? Nope.
No, I'm also kind of, look, I'm keeping it real. I'm starting to lose it because how many years of our lives are we gonna lose based on this incompetence, right? For those of us who survive it, right? Already it's been over a year and a half. Yeah. How many years are we gonna deal with this? Because our quality of life suffers, right? We can't get together with our friends, businesses shut down. I mean, I miss normal life.
Yeah. No, for that brief couple of weeks in California where we could actually go around without a mask.
Where we could be free?
Where we could be free, ironically, was great. But as soon as the Delta variant took over the whole country, we had to put the mask back on because we're decent people. And we don't go, oh, I got the freedom to smear disease all over you and maybe get your family members killed. Freedom! And so finally, guys, but mainly it does affect the unvaccinated, overwhelmingly. So I think anthropologists are gonna look back at this and go, wow, that might have been the largest death cult in certainly one of the largest death cults in human history. Because remember, they're killing themselves. They're all going around going, don't get it. And over 99% of the deaths are them, the unvaccinated. So over 500 people every day dying because they made that one choice to believe propaganda instead of doctors.
All right, I am going to avoid these types of stories in the future because they literally infuriate me. So we're gonna take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about Chuck Todd's advice and feelings for Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, disaster. Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award.
Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, news and information channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox. I told you we were coming.
I mean, you talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock. And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock, and we're gonna run you out of town, and we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country. November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Smacked it back that I like.
Say hi to the camera.
I don't like this. Florida is ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room.
TYT, Cenk and Anna. And you guys, hey, look at this. Emilia Peel Clark, bit of an American hero. Hit the join button below on YouTube. Helps bring change and truth into the world. Or you can do tyt.com/join. Love you either way. Welcome. Thanks for being a TYT member. Love it. Forward.
Let's talk a little bit about how the corporate media has covered Andrew Cuomo stepping down. Chuck Todd has weighed in with his expert analysis in regard to Governor Andrew Cuomo's decision to resign. Now, of course, Cuomo decided to resign after he was embroiled in multiple controversies. The most prominent one being the fact that he sexually harassed 11 different women, and that was outlined in the state attorney general's report. Now, Chuck Todd wanted to weigh in on why Cuomo resigned and what the benefits of his resignation could be to Cuomo's own personal career. Let's watch.
And look, I had talked to somebody very close to him last week who said, that they thought eventually he would get to resignation because he wouldn't want to, part of the punishment if he was convicted in an impeachment trial would have been no longer being able to serve in office in the state of New York. And, I think a Cuomo believes you can go and live another day,
So they're already plotting for the Cuomo comeback. And we have another video on this, but before we get to that, Cenk, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, just this is a nice appetizer video. In the state of New York, what is he's going to run for governor or senator from New York? These guys are on a different planet.
Are they?
They are. It's called Planet Washington, where there's nothing that the powerful can do that would disqualify them. He reached under a woman's blouse and grabbed her breasts. I know they don't care about the corruption, they celebrate the corruption. He shut down a corruption commission that was looking into his own donors, right? And the nursing home deaths, the Chuck Todds of the world could care less about that. But the sexual harassment thing is should be a third rail even for them. But they're like, oh no, that's just you go into celebrity jail for a little while, and then if you roll 3 times, you get out, and then we all do marketing and propaganda for you all over again, which leads us to the second clip.
Yeah, let's go to the second clip.
His career was either permanently over or almost permanently over, and he chose the path of almost permanently over, right? The resignation gives him, we know the way our world works. It's amazing the people we've seen make political comebacks. You can't ever rule it out. And I think he realized he could become a pariah in the Democratic Party for sticking it out and fighting, or he can, not saying he's gonna generate goodwill, but I promise you there's a whole bunch of state assembly members that are relieved today.
So he's doing him a solid by stepping down, because then, the state legislature doesn't have to engage in impeachment proceedings. People don't get dragged through the mud. Cuomo resigning makes it all go away. And maybe in the future, the favor can be returned. And as you were talking, Cenk, I thought about, and I could be wrong, but isn't there a Democratic senator who went to prison for corruption and got out and is currently a senator?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, sorry, I totally, okay. Edit that out. No, remember there was a Democratic lawmaker who went to prison on corruption charges, got out, and
You might be talking about a little bit earlier time, maybe from Louisiana, but I don't remember, to be honest. Okay, we probably should have done that earlier.
We're moving on. Sorry, that was a spontaneous comment. I wasn't 100% sure, that's why I asked, but we can move on
you
now.
might still be right, I don't know it. Okay, so back to this.
Yeah.
So Andrea Mitchell, in the longer version of that segment, also engaged in some questions about comeback and stuff. Can I, if I'm in class, I'm raising my hand here to ask what I think is a fairly obvious question. Why are we talking about a comeback for Cuomo? He just stepped down for doing terrible things. Like, imagine if a progressive had done what half, a quarter, 10% of what Cuomo did. Would they be like, well, when is Bernie Sanders gonna make a comeback? I don't know, everybody's thinking about it. Okay, you never know in this town, we could all go behind Bernie Sanders again. No, they would never do that, never, ever, right? But so they betray themselves. They love Cuomo, the people in power. And remember, all of Cuomo's leaks went to the mainstream media when he was going to do character assassinations of people that he had sexually harassed, people that had aided and abetted him on corruption to help them, the people that were going to expose my corruption, leak against them, smears. Guys, you read the Ronan Farrow piece about the Moreland Commission and the corruption that Cuomo covered up about his own corruption, and it's one reference to another about how he smears people who might expose him. But he mentions it, but he doesn't elaborate. It's not Ronan's fault. Ronan Farrow wrote a great piece. You should read it. We'll put the link in the description box below for you guys. Always check the description box. We have links in there for important things. So now, but they never elaborate. Wait, where did the smears go? Did they just go into the ether? Did he shout them out from a rooftop? No, you go to a reporter and you go, oh, I have an important leak for you. You're gonna get the scoop, okay? Now go destroy this person's life. Now the reporter, 99 out of 100 times doesn't go, oh, this is an obvious political hit job. I will report it as an obvious political hit job. Never, no, that's 100 out of 100 times. They never do that, right? But 99 out of 100 times they go, oh, great. I have such an important news source here. I will now get accolades from my editors for having an important news piece. It's not a news piece. You're doing propaganda for terrible people. And so Chuck Todd is part of that system. So he sees Cuomo stepping down and goes, oh, we liked Andrew Cuomo. We liked assassinating progressives together. And we loved attacking the powerless. Oh, when is he gonna do a comeback? Let's talk about the narrative of comeback. Could be any minute now. Hey, listen, and again, in the longer version of the segment, he talked about how, it could be 1 year, 3 years, however long he has to sit out.
It's so absurd.
Just bench him for a little while and then we'll bring him back. Because, why? Are we out of politicians? Are we out of American citizens that could run for office? No, you like him not despite the corruption, but because of the corruption. That's why you're rooting for the comeback.
Ronan Farrow's recent reporting in the New Yorker indicates that Cuomo engaged in obstruction of justice on a corruption investigation that was looking into his donors. Cenk briefly mentioned that. He also made awful decisions in the state of New York by forcing nursing homes to take in elderly COVID patients who then spread the virus within the nursing homes, and that led to elderly people dying. And then the Cuomo administration underreported as much as 50% of the deaths later. And then when they got caught, there was a little bit of negative attention, but everyone seems to have forgotten that. Like, people died because of Cuomo's decisions. And here's Chuck Todd having a discussion, like scheming regarding how Cuomo can make a comeback.
You know,
it's the least important angle to cover on this story. Literally the least important topic of discussion in regard to Cuomo's resignation. But MSNBC went there. MSNBC went there.
This is amazing. I'm gonna give you more quotes from that segment because it just gets crazier and crazier. He said, I think Cuomo believes he can go and live another day. Okay, now that's already, I don't know why, again, you're helping him with his narrative, but that's fine. It's not fine, but let's move on because there's worse. He continued by reflecting, I'm quoting now Mediaite, reflecting on the quote, politically pragmatic decisions Cuomo has made throughout his career. Wait, so we're not having a conversation about what a terrible sexual harasser he was, etc. We're having a conversation about, oh, way to resign after fighting it for months and months and months because you're so politically pragmatic. This is a time to praise Cuomo? That's amazing. And one more, he says, quote, he sees reality quicker than maybe some folks thought he would.
What a good guy.
On which planet? Wait, which wow. He sees reality quicker? Dude, these charges came out. Chuck, are you paying attention to any of the news? They didn't come out yesterday. It's not like, hey, they came out yesterday. Oh, he sees reality right away, he's resigning. He fought him until they did a giant investigation. The giant investigation comes out and says, you're definitely guilty. There's 11 of them and we have overwhelming evidence. He still fights it and fights it and fights it. And now he's got 3 different scandals at once. And when he finally concedes beyond any reasonable timeline, Chuck Todd turns around and goes, you see how quickly he saw it? He sees it quicker before anyone else does.
He really does, you know?
Guys, does that, look, I gotta-
Andrew Cuomo, finger on the pulse.
Oh yeah, and Chuck Todd, he does news. Again, seriously guys, does that look like news to you? And this, so manufacturing consent by Noam Chomsky was not theoretical and it was not hypothetical. It's real. They're not manufacturing news, they're manufacturing consent. So Andrew Cuomo was great for corrupt corporate donors. Why did we fight him? If you've ever watched The Young Turks, and one of our viewers who paid for our journalists before and was bragging about it today, you should brag about it because Namika Kans was one of them. And you saw her for the 5 years here and then beyond TYT, explaining to you all the things that are wrong with Andrew Cuomo. We all knew it, and Chuck Todd knew it, and New York Times, and by the way, I'll give New York Times a piece of credit here. We covered their original investigation about Cuomo's corruption. But that's the amazing thing. They do it once and they have instant collective amnesia. But wait a minute, you guys, you're the one who did the story on his corruption just yesterday, right? Nope, they go on to cover him like, oh no, he's making decisions about real estate in New York, independent of his donors. No, he's not. Corruption story showed that he was most protective of his real estate donors, okay? And then you cover it as if it's real, like his principles, etc., and how pragmatic it is. Because these guys, their whole job, and a lot of them don't even know it, their whole job is to protect the powerful, the status quo, and most of all, the donors. And that's what you saw from Chuck Todd's pathetic performance today.
When we come back, Preacher would like you to know that you don't have to worry about COVID because Jesus has got you. We've got that story and more when we return.
All right, we were just talking about which corrupt Democrat was it that Anna was thinking of. Trista wrote in the member section, Anna's thinking about Senator Menendez of New Jersey.
Yes, I was thinking about Menendez. Thank you. I was gonna say it, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't want to throw a name out there. You're the best. Thank you.
I love our members. I love doing the show with you guys. Smartest audience in the world. Menendez of New Jersey, who was facing federal corruption charges, but the trial ended in mistrial. So that's why I was confused when you said it, because I know that I know that nobody went to jail and then came out and became a senator.
I mixed him up with Blagojevich, who did spend time in jail,
yeah,
right?
And he was, that's right. And he was the governor of Illinois, but he was pardoned by Trump, even though Blagojevich was a Democrat, because Blagojevich was on Celebrity Apprentice. That's the world we live in. Okay, so yay.
What was the name of that member?
Menendez, Robert Menendez.
No, the viewer who wrote in.
Oh, Trista.
Trista, thank you.
Yes, way to be, Trista, love it. So now, tons of comments throughout the show on different things. Sexy Speed Racer just says, great beat, Bart.
Thank you very much.
Wyman writes in, because selling off public infrastructure has worked so well in Texas and out here in California. Good point. Jan says, love the poetry. We need all the poetry in our lives we can get. Look, a case of Dr. Jenk broke out last night on Old School. A serious case of it, okay? So if you like to talk about like life issues, evolution, buckle up, brace for impact, and happiness, and poetry, you're gonna love the Old School from last night. Me and Mark Thompson, check it out. If you're a member, you can check it out anytime. I'm not saying tyt.com/join, except I just said it. KW writes in, DeSantis's body language is so patronizing. Yeah, thank you, that's such a great point. I noticed that too, but I couldn't quite verbalize it. What am I, a talk show host? Anyway, Victoria writes in, thank you for this. Victoria writes in, I teach kindergarten in South Korea. The kids wear masks all day, they're fine, and more importantly, they're safer than they would be if they weren't wearing one. That's certainly true. Oh my God, look at this one. Moondragon wrote in, I think I've been watching TYT too much. The other night I had a dream, Cenk inducted me into the Turkish mafia. The food was great. If there is a Turkish mafia, I'm sure the food would be fantastic.
I mean, look, if you're enjoying the dream, cool, but that would probably make me stop watching.
No. I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. Okay. I stick to like, gel oğlum gel ya, gel bir gabagool, kebap yiyelim ya.
Gabagool.
Do gabagool in there in the middle of the Turkish thing. Oh, we have so much fun. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Casper, forward.
Look, we're gonna get back to serious stuff, but for now, let's have a little fun. A far-right preacher from Texas has a message to parishioners and to other pastors all over the world who are concerned about coronavirus. He doesn't think that you need to think about getting the shot, the vaccine. You don't have to wear a mask because Jesus has got your back. Let's watch.
Listen to me, I understand, and let me speak now to the cameras around the world, to every pastor that's watching this broadcast, to every Christian that is cowered in your home. I realize that for this last year that maybe you've been fed fear and fear and fear, but the Bible says that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. You have a sound mind. You don't have to wear the mask. You got Jesus. You don't need the vaccine. You got Jesus.
Jesus got to help you out with that sweat, boy. Like, let's keep it real. But that's Pastor Joshua Furstein, who engages in the inappropriate, irresponsible nonsense that is getting people killed across the country. So, religion rocks.
So yesterday on Old School, another member show that you should check out, I went on a little bit of a tangent on how awesome progressive Christians are. Okay, so we love you, keep it up and spread the good word instead of the bad word, okay? But for fundamentalists of all the religions, this is what they do all across the world. And by the way, you got fundamentalist Muslim preachers saying similar things in other parts of the world, like, oh, no, Allah's got you, don't worry about it. Well, it turns out Allah, Jesus, Buddha, whoever it is, they don't got you because over 500 people a day are dying.
Does Jesus not love them?
Apparently not.
No?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask Pastor Farstein because he claims that Jesus is going to protect you, but it's a fact, he did not protect them. Not only did 500 people die yesterday, but 500 people are going to die today. They're almost all unvaccinated, okay? And by the way, this country is at least 70% Christian, so likely there's a lot of Christians in that group. In fact, they'll be more heavily represented, the fundamentalists will be, because the fundamentalists are hearing this crap and they're listening to it. Unfortunately. And so, but not only that, guys, 500 people are going to die tomorrow because they listen to that pastor, and a week from now because they listen to that pastor. And so he's literally killing his own flock. But he thinks, hey, this is a good way to get attention, and I bet I make a couple of more dollars, and then I'll tell my flock Jesus was in favor of private jets. Now remember, Jesus said, sell off all of your worldly possessions and help the poor, the hungry, and the needy. Have you ever heard any of these prosperity preachers and these fundamentalist Christians in this country tell you that? No, they tell you the opposite. They literally ask for their 9th and 10th private jets, and that somehow that Jesus will then help you, the sucker who gave him the money for all those private jets. So, and then on a more fun note, why do they all have to speak the same?
Because it's somehow speaking in a way that somehow people mistake for I think they think it's passion, right? They think that God is communicating to them through this man, and for some reason they think it's more believable. I mean, obviously, I don't find it believable at all. I would rather look at the data that we have in front of us, the insane number of Americans who needlessly died during this pandemic. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them. And they continue to die, as Cenk pointed out, on a daily basis. And it's because of selfish, greedy, irresponsible people, yes, like this preacher, but also by our elected officials who were elected to protect Americans, to serve their best interests, but have decided to serve their own best interests and whatever their corporate donors want in terms of prematurely opening businesses back up and things like that. It's just, this is the world that we're living in, where profit motive, self-preservation, anything that incentivizes an individual takes priority over the common good, takes priority over public health and safety. That's the country we live in. We are in a uniquely awful position as Americans to respond to a pandemic because everything is commodified. We already live in a society that puts profits over people. So yeah, we're gonna continue responding to a global pandemic this way, knowing that a ton of people are needlessly gonna die because some people gotta make money, like that guy.
So I promised a couple of days ago that I wouldn't be as judgmental of Republicans, so I'm gonna try it here, and I'm gonna do what I counsel you guys. In family settings or friends settings, sometimes when you run into conservatives, I tell you guys to ask questions. So I would ask the same questions of this pastor and the people in his church and the people that listen to him. So why is Jesus against doctors? That seems weird, doesn't it? Why don't you ask your pastor? Because, and they're getting all the wrong information. Like when I say that all the doctors are in favor of the vaccine, right-wingers online go, no, they're not, it's split evenly. No, it's not split evenly at all, They're lying to you. The people that you think are your leaders are treating you like fools. Go get actual information. It's not that hard at all. You can Google it. You can Google it, and you, oh my God, I ran into this one conspiracy website. Yes, but how about all the other websites with actual doctors? How about you go and ask your doctor and 3 other doctors, 10 other doctors, and you will see they all say, get the vaccine. It's going to save your life. You're in danger of dying without it. So, it's like that line from Star Trek. Why does God need a spaceship? Why would Jesus be against all the doctors in the world? That doesn't make any sense. Why would Jesus want to kill off 500 people a day because they're unvaccinated? But wait a minute, if he's against vaccinations, why is he only killing the unvaccinated? Just ask questions, that's all. And maybe it'll help if you ask it this way. Jesus, what did he was he in favor of? Why is that more convincing? It's talking like that. It's so weird. Doesn't anybody just sit there and go, "Why are we talking like this?" Nobody asked that question.
There were 1,000 people in that audience.
Oh, they love it. They love that stuff.
No,
Yeah. I just want to see a pastor one day come out and be like, "Hey guys, how you doing?"
Oh, they start throwing names at them. Come on.
And somebody just to say Jesus instead of Jesus. Okay. I don't think his name was Jesus, but hey.
There's a whole like Toastmasters curriculum that helps you speak like that. No, I'm just kidding. There is a sorry, Toastmasters. You guys don't do that. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Anything else? Like weapons being smuggled into Mexico.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. The Mexican government is suing major US gun manufacturers over the flow of these weapons going south of the border and leading to violence in the country of Mexico. Now, the likelihood of them actually winning in these lawsuits is slim, especially when you consider the immunity and the protections that the federal government of the United States has given to these gun manufacturers. But I think there's an important point and something to learn from this story, because oftentimes when we talk about issues pertaining to immigration, when we talk about violence in Central American countries, in countries like Mexico, more often than not, we talk about the economic drivers that fuel mass migration. We should talk about how we contribute to the violence south of our border. So Mexico announced that it is seeking at least $10 billion in compensation from 11 major US gun manufacturers for the havoc the guns have wrought south of the border. The lawsuit alleges America's gun makers know their products are being trafficked to Mexico and are expressly marketing their weapons to Mexican criminal gangs, designing guns to be easily modified to fire automatically and be readily transferable on the criminal market in Mexico. The Mexican government brings this attention to put an end to the massive damage that the defendants caused by actively facilitating the unlawful trafficking of their guns to drug cartels and other criminals in Mexico, the lawsuit said. And just to give you a quick stat to give you a sense of how severe this problem is. And as Americans, we should know how severe the problem is. I mean, we experienced the gun violence firsthand. The government estimates that 70% of the weapons trafficked to Mexico come from the United States, and that's according to Mexico's Foreign Affairs Ministry, and that in 2019 alone, at least 17,000 homicides were linked to these trafficked weapons.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's important to know the reality of how America and our gun manufacturers contribute to the violence south of our border. But I also want to be clear, we can't even get justice for gun violence victims in the United States. You think that the US government or our legal system is somehow going to compensate or take care of the victims of gun violence in Mexico?
Well, but the only chance would be the legal system. Our politicians would never, ever, ever do it. They, like Anna said, I mean, they murdered dozens of kids in a school, and I'm not even talking about Columbine, and I'm not talking about Florida. I'm talking about Connecticut. But all of them. But Sandy Hook, they were tiny little kids massacred right in front of our eyes. Our government has done nothing about it. Zero.
That was during the Obama administration, by the way.
Obama didn't do anything. Trump didn't do anything. Biden hasn't done anything. Oh my God, fighting someone with that gives donations to either political party, that golly gee, that would be too hard. Federal background checks have 97% popularity in the country. We can't get it passed. Really, we got a democracy. But I love this lawsuit because pursuing them on legal grounds is a good strategy, an interesting strategy. And they're actually definitely right. That doesn't mean they're gonna win, but they're definitely right. Because certain products have byproducts and they should pay for those costs. Mm-hmm. So one cost of, for example, the oil companies is climate change. And we all have to pay for climate change. So when your town gets hit by a massive hurricane or gets lit on fire, the oil companies already took the profits home. They don't share it with you. They go, ha, idiot, you got your house burnt down and I'm not gonna pay you anything for it, right? Now that's my byproduct, but I'm not paying my costs, you're paying my costs. And now Mexico is saying to the gun manufacturers, we're tired of paying your costs. And so here, let me give you some stats. So 70% of the weapons in Mexico come from the US, and there's a reason for that, I'll get to that in a second. There's been at least 17,000 homicides using those weapons. 17,000 people murdered. That's a giant cost to the government of Mexico.
In 2019 alone.
Yes, and then when they do the math on it, the traffic guns cost them about 1.7 to 2% of their gross domestic product. That is a stunning number. That's a giant number, okay? And it's real, those are real costs. And so now in America, why did we have 70% of the guns in Mexico come from America? How did that happen, right? Well, it happened because we passed certain laws here. We said, or we didn't pass certain laws. People said, hey, why don't we stop cop killer bullets? They're literally designed only to kill law enforcement. The NRA fought it, wrote checks to Republicans, and they made sure it didn't pass. So now cops in Mexico die because we wouldn't pass a prohibition on it, right? Terrorist watch list. The NRA said and won, no, terrorists should be allowed to buy weapons. They won on that. They won on that.
Also, there's no regulations in regard to gun purchases, between private sellers or at gun shows. So if you want to smuggle weapons across the border and not have to deal with any type of background check or the federal authorities, just go to a gun show and buy as many guns as you want from the back of someone's truck, smuggle them over to Mexico.
And they also won on an issue where we can't trace the weapons. Any big country that cares about law enforcement would allow you to trace the weapons, because if you use it in self-defense or to hunt, then you have no problems at all. Why would you mind your weapon being traced? In fact, it could help you, because if a bad guy steals your weapon, we can trace it and get you your weapon back, right? If you're actually using it for the right purposes, Second Amendment rights and all that, right? But if you're a gun manufacturer, you hate the idea of your guns being traced, because then we would find out that you're actually funneling them to criminals. So you know why? Criminals buy lots of guns. Gangs in Mexico and drug cartels buy tons and tons of guns. Finally, guys, their business. Do you really think they're voluntarily giving up massive profits because they're going, well, what if it went to drug cartels in Mexico? I mean, how could we sleep with it, with that on our conscience? But your guns kill tons of people here in America anyway, whether they're going to cartels or not. They're like, oh yeah, good point. Make sure you sell it to anyone. Make the money, make the money, make the money. If you think anything else, you are hopelessly naive. Of course they're gonna try to maximize profit, which means of course they're gonna try to sell it to the drug cartels through middlemen. And of course you don't want your weapons traced. So if you're the government of Mexico, you know that that's happening, and you will no, I can show that you know, just like that law firms here in America did with OxyContin. They showed that the distributors absolutely positively had to know and did know that it was being used to sell illegally, and they kept selling it anyway for profit, and they made tons of profit.
Yeah.
So since the gun manufacturers know that their guns are being distributed to drug cartels, yes, they're definitely responsible, should be held accountable, and should pay the Mexican government, and by the way, our governments.
Look, for me, the main takeaway of the story is, if you are a gun advocate to the point where you fight back against any common sense gun legislation like federal background checks that apply to all gun sales, and you also simultaneously whine and cry about migrants fleeing their countries to come seek asylum at our border because of violence in their home countries, understand those two things are connected. And you don't get to eat your cake and eat it. Like, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. That's the thing. I think Americans are under this assumption that they can behave in any way they want. They can deregulate any way they want. They can listen to hollow arguments about our Second Amendment rights as if our constitutional rights don't have limitations in order to push for more deregulation of guns. And then they turn around and they're just like, well, why are there so many migrants coming to the border? It's your behavior. It's what you advocate for. So when our behavior in our borders leads to violence in other countries, and they're seeking safety from that violence, we better allow them an opportunity to come here for safety, okay? We don't get to point at them and discredit them and make them out to be these bad guys, these dangerous people, when in reality, the dangerous people are within our own borders. The people who think it's totally fine for guns to be deregulated to the point that massive amounts of them can be smuggled across the border to Mexican drug cartels. That's the takeaway from this story. Actions have consequences. Let's take a break, we'll be right back.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a lot about watching TYT live. Try to watch our shows, as many of them as you can live. Just it's fun. It's throughout the day. It's different programs. Dip in, see how you like it. So, for example, Rick Strom is live every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube.com/TYT Sports. And he doesn't just talk about sports, he talks about the intersection of sports and politics. I feel like that show is more political than it is sports, but you'll love it. So check it out, youtube.com/TYT Sports. It's live Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern, okay? And then Wozny is on tonight on Twitch, twitch.tv/TYT. And that's, of course, Wozny Lambre, and he's on at 10 o'clock Eastern tonight, so check him out. And then dramatic news, we have different simulcasts of the show in a couple of places. So if for those of you folks that are watching on the Damage Report, we're gonna end that simulcast. It's okay, it's the same show. You can just watch it here on TYT. So you can come to youtube.com/TYT, you can go to tyt.com/live, you know all your options, right? So if you're watching on Damage Report, don't panic, come over to TYT. It's the same show, watch it here, okay?
I have to read this excellent comment from Tiger Katsoon. It's on TYT Live, but it's such a great point. That cadence of speaking that the preacher was imitating was stolen from the black church. Some of us black folks just talk like that when we're excited or breaking things down. So it's a form of gentrification.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
or
really
cultural appropriation.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And I mean, you see similar things happening in music and all facets of life. So thank you for sharing that perspective with us.
And then, by the way, they'll turn around and say, why don't you speak proper English? You're doing Ebonics.
Yeah.
Remember those days when they used to do that?
But I also have to say, like, clearly there's a difference between listening. Like, look, Dr. Cornel West, when he gets in that mode, it's obviously very different from what we saw from that weird evangelical preacher.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, going to members. Tuffy writes in, old school last night was awesome. Thank you, Tuffy, appreciate it. Remember reading your comments. Gabby Marita asked about the preacher. So is that sweaty bag of gas going to lose his tax exempt status? Yeah, do we have laws in this country or don't we? They're never applied to right wingers. Celeste says, why do you need to open carry if you've got Jesus? Hypocrites. Good point. Yeah, why do you need a gun? You got Jesus to protect you. And LMG15 asks, how's COVID-19 supposed to know whether or not I've accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior? These are important questions, but I don't know if COVID-19 and Jesus talk or if that's sacrilege, I'm not sure. Lauren W, American hero. Lauren just joined by hitting the join button below. Nicole, Bradley Slaughter says, I live in Florida and it's so hard not to lose my sanity. Still have my family members who go out all the time and are not vaccinated. Can't even talk to Republicans now without yelling at them. I hear you. All right, Back on TYT, I just want to make a couple quick points about our audience on Twitch. Earlier I said depressed progressive was a he, it's a she. Thank you, depressed progressive. As I always say, you lift up our spirits. Daisy Dragon gave 500 bits, which we genuinely and sincerely appreciate. But I mainly want to read this comment. K-Fax the Destructor wrote in, I'm a longtime viewer, I'm a healthcare worker in a red state, and it is utterly depressing and demoralizing. TYT helps me keep sane and gives me hope. Keep up the good fight. Thank you so much. And you should have hope. We're gonna get past these dark times. And you see with Andrew Cuomo's resignation, sometimes justice actually finally comes. It's a long time coming, but it did come today. And I think there's gonna be more and more of that as we go.
I really hope my rants are cathartic.
Yeah, I think they are for a lot of people.
I hope so. It's real, so sometimes I can't hold back, especially when it comes to the vaccination and masking issue. But anyway, thank you for doing what you do. I can't imagine being a healthcare worker right now. It's just, you guys are heroes, and you don't get enough love and validation for what you do, especially considering how some people continue to behave in the middle of this pandemic.
And endanger your lives, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. All right, let's talk about. This story's gonna be another venting session for me. So, a woman decided to bother one of her neighbors over a Tigger flag that her neighbor was flying in front of her home. It's a small flag, it's a cute flag, and they don't live in a situation where there's a homeowners association that gets to butt into their personal lives. So let's watch what this woman had to say.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I want to talk about this Tigger's flag.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Okay, why not?
Now, I thought the American flag was real nice. I don't say nothing about the shrubbery being cut. I don't say nothing about the backyard. But now, I don't like that.
Oh, okay, I didn't hang that. My brother hung that.
Well, I know. I'm just telling you, I don't like it.
Okay.
And we have rules. I won't have to go find out what they are, but I don't like that.
I mean, this isn't a homeowners association, though.
No, but there's rules for the community. There is called Williamsburg something, and there's rules.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, I don't like it.
All right.
It makes it look tacky.
Welcome.
Makes the neighborhood look tacky.
It doesn't, but that's okay.
Huh?
I said it doesn't, but it's okay. You're allowed your opinion.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna find out about it.
All right. Well, you have a good day.
Ignored. So this was the offensive flag. Yes, it is Tigger from Winnie the Pooh.
Wow. Let me just say that the homeowner who is flying that cute flag was far more patient than I would be, because especially in the absence of a homeowners association, one of the worst groups that you could ever have to deal with, she should have slammed the door. But maybe a few, maybe some cursing before slamming the door at her face. Oh, you think this looks tacky? I mean, leave people alone. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we take a look at that woman's house? Maybe we can decide what we think is there's no homeowners association. There's no rule indicating that she can't fly that flag. But the woman, by the way, knows it. She knows it. I don't want to have to look up the laws and the rules. I know they don't exist, but I want to have to look them up. Be on your way, lady. Bye-bye. Go. No, I can't stand people like this. These people are the worst. They're the worst, the worst. The neighbors who are constantly up your you-know-what about like, oh, I don't like that rug that you have in front of your door. And no, I don't like these decorations. And oh, I don't like that color that you painted your garage. Shut up.
Okay, so I had a number of thoughts about this when I saw the video. First of all, I know that it makes you mad, but that was highly amusing to me. I don't like it.
Who cares? Again, it goes back to entitlement. It goes back to entitlement.
Yes.
I don't like it. And even though I know there are no rules against this Tigger flag, I am entitled to telling you I don't like it, to pressure you to take it down. No, you're not entitled to that. Be on your way, lady. Be on your way.
I knew that I couldn't get through this story.
I'm sorry, Cenk. Go ahead. You know what? Zipping it. I'm zipping it right now.
I doubt it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Zipping it.
Nope, not gonna happen. Okay, here we go. So I don't like it. I just kept thinking in my head, I'd be thinking, duly noted. And I would have a completely different reaction than I'm like, you know what, though, wait, when the third time she said it, I'm like, you know what, I'm really glad you said it again. I'm gonna go write it down, because I almost forgot. Which way do you go, yes or no? No, right, you don't like it, got it. We're writing it down, we're gonna mull it over, okay? We're gonna work 24/7 around the clock thinking about that Tigger flag. Why would I care what you think? Okay, so now the second thing I thought of was Anna. I know this gets under your skin in the biggest way. And that if she had come to Anna's door, that would have been the wrong door to come to.
Oh, I mean, I unfortunately do have to deal with an HOA. And there's one particular person who's constantly up our business, constantly. And I've gotten to a point where I just scream at her every time she tries to talk to me.
Okay, that's
and I tell her not to talk to me. I literally, and I've slammed the door on her face several times. Like, I don't know how that woman stayed so calm. There is no HOA in this community.
I love that woman. She's the calmest person in America.
She's the best. She's better than me. Way better than me. But like, I dream of the day. And it'll happen someday. I don't know how, but it'll happen someday. I dream of the day when I don't have an HOA.
Yeah.
And someone tries to come at me about the flag that I'm flying.
Yeah, so I remember.
Be on your way.
So I remember in our neighborhood when I was growing up, some house was in disrepair, let's put it there, and it really was, okay? And I remember somebody saying, and at the time I guess I must have been in high school or something, growing up talking about, should we do something about it? I'm like, and I remember thinking, what would we do about it? It's not our house, right? So it's called freedom.
It's exactly, yeah. If a house is in disrepair and it's such an eyesore for you as a private property owner, then why don't you do something about it? Why don't you, if it bothers you, then why don't you be a good neighbor and offer to help?
Yeah, you could
offer to help.
Yeah, like the lawn was out of control. I was like, and I'm sure I'm making this up, but I think that I thought, why don't you go mow the lawn?
No, you didn't.
I'm sure I did. 100%. I'm sure. Yeah, 100%.
No, there's no way.
But look, anyway, it doesn't matter.
I love how you're trying to give yourself credit. You're like,
no, I swear, I think I remember that, but I totally agree with you to call BS on me. Okay, so we're moving forward. Okay, so another favorite part of the video was, it's called Williamsburg Sun. Is it?
I mean, white people in America talk about firing their weapon on government workers who are just trying to get them vaccinated. Yeah. This woman shows up and she's like, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't like your flag. Oh, but be on your way. What are you doing? She took time out of her day to knock on a neighbor's door for that.
And think about how incredibly rude that is.
No,
to go to somebody else's house, which is a perfectly fine house. You see, it's not in disrepair or anything like that. You saw the rest of the yard; it looks great, etc. To go to somebody's house and say, "I don't like something that I don't like how a certain part of your house looks." What an incredibly rude thing to say. But and guys, that's the only serious point here. It's the entitlement.
Yes.
She thinks like, I'm in charge. Everybody else has to do what I think. And the only thing is, it was a minor miracle that didn't get racial, right? Like the whole time I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, I'm like, oh, okay, it didn't get racial, okay? But overall though, she thinks I'm the boss of this town. It's Williamsburg Sun, okay? And she's like, oh, I know it, it's in the rule. I mean, I don't know it, I'm gonna look it up. But okay, and final thing is JR's reaction in the production meeting was awesome. He's like, oh, I wish somebody would do that to me. Because then I would go to every neighbor and be like, knock, knock. I don't really like that window. Okay, you got to change how that window looks. Okay, I don't like your bushes. and you got to clean up your bushes.
Don't get the other neighbors involved, okay? The other neighbors are good people. They're not harassing, they're not bothering. It's just this one woman, and every neighborhood has one. You guys all know it. Every neighborhood has one, okay? The lady who doesn't have anything else to do all day, so she's walking around. She's like, that grass is too high. I don't like that flag. I don't like that color. Oh, your mail is really gathering up in this mailbox. Maybe you should check. Shut up, go away, go away. Go find a hobby, lady. What are you doing?
I wonder if this is personal for Anna. I can't quite tell. Okay.
She knows.
She knows.
All right.
Okay, next story.
Let's talk about Miami. An 8-story condo building in Miami is the latest to be deemed unsafe. And unfortunately, hundreds of people living in that building have been forced to evacuate. This follows the collapse of the Champlain Towers in Surfside near Miami in the past year, or in June specifically. And that tragically left 98 people dead. So I give you this update on the situation in Miami with these condo buildings because this isn't the first to be deemed unsafe, and it appears that it won't be the last. There were several other condo buildings in the area that had to be evacuated because they were deemed unsafe. Now, an eviction notice was posted at the entrance of the building on Monday. Hundreds of residents from 137 units had only hours to leave, and that's according to a city official. And this comes after the building received an unsafe structure violation in May. And the city met with residents who were concerned about the condition of the building at the end of July. Among the violations, not obtaining a 40-year recertification. The city told the building to submit plans to fix the issues immediately, but never received the plans. In fact, they started doing construction on the building without a permit.
So Miami. And that's the problem. That's why Miami's finally trying to regulate. Because as I told you during that story about the original building collapse in Surfside, it is so Miami to do it without a permit and to go, I find your government regulations to be optional. Well, it turns out they're there for a reason and they really shouldn't be optional. And what I'm amazed by is, I don't know to what degree the residents knew about the problem in May and July when the building was told about it. But if you're a resident living in that building and you saw just across the way that another building collapsed because they weren't following the rules and the laws, and you have a similar issue, I would think that would be a time to be concerned and say maybe perhaps we should follow the rules because we saw a stark example of what happens when you don't.
Right, and I mean, there's definitely an issue with the way building codes and regulations work in some states versus the others. In California, some of the building codes are obviously a lot more stringent, for instance, a lot more strict. In Florida, there's a lot less regulation, and when you consider the era some of these condo buildings were built in and some of the money laundering that took place among those who were trafficking drugs, yeah, we should be a little concerned. And in this case, they needed to repair columns that are holding the entire condo building up. Now, this isn't the only example. Last month, the Crestview Towers condominium in North Miami Beach was also evacuated after building officials determined that it was unsafe. A fire was put out in the 156-unit building on Monday. Authorities said no injuries were immediately reported and the cause of the fire had not been determined. Great. So this is what's been going down in Miami with these condo buildings. It's absolutely devastating, but this is why you need regulations to make sure that buildings are built in a safe and stable way.
All right, in the bonus episode for the members, A, we're gonna have fun. B, we're gonna talk about Mike Lindell, it'll be funny. And C, I'm gonna say to Mike Lindell, I don't like it. Okay, hit the join button below, we'll see you there.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right?
Wow, man.
I can see the void.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Florida's ground zero. We're God's waiting room.
So we were just talking about HOAs. I know you're shocked about that during the break. And so I wasn't an HOA, but I rented. But the apartment that we started TYT from was in a normal apartment in an apartment building off of Sunset in LA, right? And I had a 1-bedroom and a little tiny little balcony that overlooked the pool area. I never once went in the pool. That's how bad it was. Like it wasn't like, oh, we have a pool, right? I lived there at least 3 years, maybe 4. I remember like maybe 4 people going into that pool in the entire time. But anyways, the reason I bring up that story is because that area would like echo like crazy. Mm-hmm. So if anyone was having an argument, everybody would hear it. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you were facing the pool area, it would just reverberate off the walls and you would hear it. And there was this gay couple, and they would fight like clockwork every Saturday morning to afternoon. Okay, so around 11 a.m. to once we got to noon, I was like, come on, what are you? You're not gonna fight today? I look forward to it. I'd be like, go ahead. And then they'd be like, I can't believe you did this. And the other one would be like, oh yeah, you did this.
Yeah.
And so for the reason I bring that up is because when the neighbors get mad, I'm always so amused. I'm like, are you kidding me? Pull up a chair, have fun, listen to their argument.
No, I love it. You're so right. I have a similar story. So when I used to live in West Hollywood, okay, that was when I was renting an apartment there, and my unit was right in front of a pool, right? Or the pool. And there was, there were a lot of young party animals in that building, which I appreciated. It was the time that I liked that, And one of those party animals on Saturday mornings loved to go in the pool and he'd bring his, I don't know, boombox or whatever you want to call it, and he'd play his dance music while he was enjoying his time in the pool. But one of the older tenants, much older tenants, didn't like that. He didn't like fun. Okay, he wanted to put a stop to the fun. And so he would he was always coming in and he wasn't, by the way, super lovely guy. I got along with him great. He wasn't nitpicking all the time. But he didn't like loud dance music in the pool area, which I get, okay, cool. Didn't bother me, but I can see how it could bother others. But their fights would get so nuclear, and then the young guy uttered my favorite line of all time. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm gonna say it for the purpose of this story. The guy was like, "You're just a bitter queen." The best line of all time. It was so good. But yeah, I recorded it too. I was in my.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, of course. I was in my unit, just recording it with my phone. I was
that's the original viral video. We should have shown it on the show.
Yeah, I have it in, documents. I have it hidden.
Documents. Yeah, no, I love those fights. And I love that they were that they almost had it planned out. Why every Saturday morning? Such a curious thing. Saturday morning's supposed to be lovely, you watch Super Friends, a little bit of wrestling, and they're like, yeah, no, let's fight. We're talking about wrestling, let's rumble. No, a lot of times I like trolling people. I think mockery is fun. But only if somebody gets at you, right? So I told you guys a story a couple months ago of when I was in high school again, and we were playing tennis in our, and some guy comes up, tennis instructor, starts yelling at me because I suck and I hit the ball over to their court or something. I'm like, dude, that's called freedom. I have no obligation to be good at tennis so that I don't accidentally hit the ball. I'm not trying to hit the ball to your court. It's a pain in the ass, then I gotta go get it. I don't want to, I'm just not good, right? And then he's still young, and then he called me fat, right?
Jeez.
Yeah. And then the hilarious thing was, he was so overweight.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. And so I leaned down to where his belly was. Okay, again, I'm an overweight American, okay, but I leaned down to his belly and I started pointing to him like, are you calling me fat? And I started walking around with him. Are you calling me fat? And just pointing at his belly. This guy's calling me fat, okay? So, I prefer instead of getting angry to be like, brother, you gotta pick a different battleground. Okay, this is not the battlefield. This is not the hill you wanna die on, okay?
Listen, mockery is always the best option. But there's a fire within me.
Yes, well,
and I just.
I think Oral Roberts was talking about you in that clip.
No, he was
There's
not.
a fire within them.
I know, but he was talking about that in a different context.
Oh yes, that's true. No, he was not talking about the orifices of the nose.
No, he was not. But anyway, no, I was talking to Christian yesterday because he was like, I'm thinking about, he's like, I want to take kickboxing classes, but not to work out. He's like, I want to learn how to kickbox. I want to learn some form of self-defense. Believe me, he knows self-defense. It might not be technically correct, but I've seen it and he knows it.
That's Anna's favorite thing.
But it's so hot. But anyway, but the thing that really excites me right now, and I think that it would be beneficial, is a kickboxing class or any class where I'm punching a bag.
Oh yeah, that would be great for you. I don't know about Christian,
That would
but
sound,
for
that
you it
sounds
would be great.
so good.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do it. I think I need it. And it's not about learning self-defense, which I should probably also learn. But it's just like, it's a positive way of thinking about how I'd like to deal with the HOA without actually dealing with them that way.
Yeah. No, yeah, all the fighting moves I know I learned by watching Hulk Hogan, so I'm good.
Oh, you're great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. The best tutorial.
Yeah, oh yeah. And of course Snuka and Rowdy Roddy Piper and Macho Man. I did drop a knee on someone once in a fight. I did put the sleeper hold on someone once. It actually works, be careful.
There's a wrestling commercial that comes on as I'm watching Animal Kingdom. So since I'm watching the newest season, I have to deal with the commercials. No, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like it's so American. It's such an American thing.
You know, that's the funny thing about me. I love America. So I get all the downsides. We talk about all the downsides, and I am not a right winger who thinks never mention the downsides. We shall ignore them for the rest of time and never fix them. No, of course you got to acknowledge the fix, etc. Right? But like I like the schlocky America. Like before they made it bad, like the right wing's like taking it in a dark place where they like wrap themselves in the flag and then do terrible things. Like leave the flag alone. Leave the
No,
you know.
You're wrong. No, I've realized something. Woodstock '99 made me.
Here we go. Woodstock '99. Here we go again. Okay.
I'm obsessed with Woodstock '99.
I don't like it.
Have you watched it yet?
No, but I did watch Val because of Bart.
Jake, watch it. It's your generation.
Is it? Okay.
It is. It's disaffected Gen Xers. Like,
that's me. I'm so disaffected.
Okay, but seriously, no, because I, you know, when I was watching, how am I forgetting the name of this? Sopranos on HBO. You know, Sopranos was filmed at a time when America was different. Like part of it was filmed before 9/11 happened. So I started like getting all these like nostalgic feelings regarding the 90s specifically. And I was like, oh, the 90s, it was such a simple time and it was so great. The 90s were great. And then I realized like, no, the 90s weren't great. Just that I happened to be a kid in the 90s.
Of course.
And when you're a kid, you're shielded from how awful things are.
Definitely.
Things were awful.
No, I know,
and
but
continue to be.
No, but actually, wait. My only amendment to that is they were both. They were awful, and we were shielded from it. But in our little bubble, they were great. And so, like, both things are true, right? And so, if you're in your bubble, that doesn't mean you have to hate your bubble, right? And like, oh no, I will share your pain by making myself miserable. You don't have to do that, but it would be great if you helped. You know, once you found out that you were in a bubble, and then there's this rest of the world, and some of it's not so good, then go and help. But it's okay to enjoy the things that were positive and innocent inside that bubble. I mean, I was super lucky. I had a really good childhood. I mean, I got to watch General Hospital anytime I wanted.
Oh, super lucky, whoa.
So, but remember also perspective too. I've told this story many times, but when I lived in Turkey, I lived in a city. I lived in Istanbul, so it was gray, cement, concrete, buildings, etc. We lived in a kind of a high rise, and so we had no lawn, of course. We had a tiny little patch of grass somewhere beyond the concrete, right? But it was tiny.
Sounds like my life right now.
Yeah, well, this is somewhat true. I can see that, right?
Yeah.
But on the other, so when we came to America, and there's trees everywhere, and there's grass everywhere. Oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing, and that's okay to like soak that in, absorb that, and enjoy that, and appreciate that. And then I went on to become poor, and I thought to myself, I don't like it. But even then, I remember being in Arlington, being dirt poor, but sometimes we go out for wings, you go out to Pizzeria Uno,
life was simple.
Life was simple and life was great in ways. It was bad and it was great, right? Yeah. But my point to you guys is, and if you watched Old School last night, don't make me get back into it. Anyways, but you can do both. You can be helpful to others and love others and understand their pain and empathize with it and help them get past it while not bathing in that pain. Like you don't have an obligation, you don't have to feel guilty about not feeling pain yourself or feeling bad yourself. You could be a happy warrior. It's okay. I'd like to think I'm a happy warrior, and we go fight for others, other people we don't know, because we're good people. okay?
Yeah.
But at the same time, go home, have fun, play your boombox by the pool.
Yeah,
and have fights at Saturday mornings. Have
totally.
fun.
Live, seize the day. By the way, speaking of Woodstock 99, I am doing an episode of The Conversation today with our very own Aaron Wysocki, a mild-mannered gent who did attend Woodstock 99.
Yeah, that is interesting. So we're gonna go on to the Mike Lindell story. But I watched Val. And so that's a documentary about Val Kilmer on Amazon Prime, actually. And if you have that, tyt.com/prime.
You'll watch the Val Kilmer documentary, but you won't watch the Woodstock 99 documentary. Okay.
Am I saying that I trust Bart's judgment over yours? I don't know. About movies, I don't know. Nobody said that.
Bart's the one who recommended Woodstock 99.
Oh, okay, then never mind. I'm watching it right away.
Thank you very much.
Anyways, guys, man. So he had throat cancer, and he doesn't look great. Just keeping it real, okay? And I grew up with that guy. That guy was in Top Gun. That guy was in all the movies we watched, and he was so good looking, right? So just for God's sake, he was on top of the world. So for God's sake, soak it in, okay? Because you don't know when bad stuff's gonna happen. He didn't know he was gonna get throat cancer. He didn't know that he had to speak through that thing,
Yep.
And he didn't, and that ended his career, of course. And he was so hopeful, and he was gonna make a thing about Mark Twain, and et cetera.
Life only gets worse as you get older, right? Which is why I'm getting more and more antsy about this pandemic, because these are the best years of my life.
Yeah.
And they're wasting away, like I'm wasting away, like indoors, like having to restrict myself. Like I wanna live.
Yeah.
When do I get back? When do we go back to living? That's the thing. Like they're robbing us of our freedom, but we never get to make that point. They get to make the point, right? Even though their so-called freedom gets other people sick and killed, including themselves. But what about our freedom?
Totally. Super last thing on that is that, when I was younger, I believed what I heard from the media, that Val Kilmer was hard to work with. But when you watch the movie, you realize, look, and by the way, that might have been partly true, but what you realize is, oh no, he actually loved acting. And so when a director was just phoning it in, it really bothered him because he wanted to make a great movie. And then I was like, oh, this is the same thing they do in politics. When someone's trying to not be corrupt, they're like, not a team player, right? And so Val Kilmer became not a team player because he actually wanted to do his job right. And it's so frustrating, and I believe the hype. Right, I believe the propaganda, and I realized watching the movie. Of course, that the movie industry put that out about him because they were mad that he didn't do a remake of Batman. He wasn't following the rules, right? And they felt almost personally insulted by his principles, right?
Was he the original Young Turk?
In a sense. Okay, so I'll tell you, I
we
lied.
gotta do Lindell, Jane.
I know, so super last thing. So I moved to LA, I don't know if it's first year, second year, but it's recent. I'm still in that Sunset apartment for sure. And in fact, I'm going there, I'm almost there, and there's some rando cuts me off like crazy. I don't remember if it was like an old school car that Jared would have loved, right? And then I'm like, what the? And I started leaning on the horn. The guy turns around and goes, and smiles, a big broad smile, and goes, and it's Val Kilmer.
No.
Yeah, and I was like,
by the way, that peace sign, did it make you feel better?
Yeah, it did, because it was Val Kilmer, and I thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw.
Okay, but like, even if it's not Val Kilmer, like just that acknowledgement of like, thanks, I really needed to do that.
Oh, 100%.
Automatically makes me feel better,
Oh,
and it's
of
like, you know
course.
what? You may proceed.
Yeah. Yeah, Bart.
Yeah, Jake, at that moment, did you feel like you were his wingman?
Okay, but seriously, I thought, holy shit, LA is so cool. It's so surreal. I grew up watching this guy, now he's cutting me off in traffic.
So cool.
But it's trippy. And then I remember on my street, the street I lived on, I'm like, that guy walking down the street, oh my God, that's Duke from General Hospital. I'm like, Val Kilmer cuts me off, Duke walks down my street. This place
Not
is
Duke
crazy.
from General Hospital.
Duke from General Hospital. I mean, he wasn't a Cassidy, but still.
Oh my God. Okay. Should we do Lindell?
Let's do Mike Lindell.
All right, so. Mike Lindell was asked about his claim regarding Donald Trump being reinstated on August 13th. That date is quickly approaching. So what happened? Well, apparently he told Vice, quote, "Nobody said that, nobody 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 said that, okay? I think this interview is over." Cool, that's actually quite a U-turn from what he had actually been saying. Let's watch.
By the time the morning of August 13th, it'll be the talk of the world going, hurry up, let's get this election pulled down, let's right the right. Let's get these communists out, that they're taken over. And you'll see, when I say that, and they'll say, well, what's going to happen to all the people that were involved? I don't know. Right now, the biggest concern is getting this election pulled down. Donald Trump won. I mean, it's pretty simple. Okay, and there were many down-ticket senators, too, that they did, too, and stuff. You'll find all that out.
I mean, that's just one example. It's not like he said it all the time, did he? Like in this video.
What I'm talking about, Steve, is what I have been doing since January 9th. All the evidence I have, everything is going to go before the Supreme Court, and the election of 2020 is going bye-bye. It was an attack by other country, communism coming in. I don't know what they're going to do with it after they pull it down, but it's.
Hang on a second.
Hold on. Donald Trump will be back in office in August.
All right.
Nobody said that. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. Nobody said that.
Nobody said that. Now,
dude, you're on tape. You don't know you're on tape?
So he's hosting a cyber symposium in South Dakota to call out what he refers to as fake elections. Lindell has claimed that his symposium will show that he was given data by unknown individuals on January 9th that he has called packet captures.
I call them pocket captures, but to each his own.
A technical format for capturing web traffic. Lindell says the data shows the Chinese Communist Party interfered in the election results in all 50 states, Chinagate. Lindell is offering the cyber guys a bounty of $5 million to disprove his claim that the packet captures came from the November elections. Now, that claim has already been proven to be bogus. I mean, you don't really have to do much legwork to disprove what Lindell is saying there. And Cenk, why don't you jump in before we give you more from this S show of a symposium?
Yeah, symposium. Nobody said that. So there's a bunch of things, of course, I'm amused by here. Number one is January 9th, some rando walks up to him and goes, "These are." Mike, don't tell anyone. These are packet captures. And he's like, "Did you say packet captures?" And he's like, "What is that?" He's like, "It shows the elections. Packet captures, that's it. The election was stolen. I knew it. Because they want to believe the thing that they came in believing. As they thought for sure, 1,000,000% that Trump was going to win. So when he doesn't, they need the packet captures and they need the massive dumps. And they need the Kraken. And Trump kept on, "We got massive dumps. Wait till you see our dumps." Okay, the dumps will prove that it was stolen. Nothing ever proves that it was stolen because it wasn't. And I like their idiosyncrasies. Like, I like when he leans in and goes, "It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple." And I like when Steve Bannon's trying to cut him off so he doesn't get sued.
Yeah.
And then finally he's like, "Oh, go ahead."
So let's get back to this cyber symposium, which was mostly viewed by QAnon conspiracy theorists and stuff like that, of course. Now, the event happened to be a disaster. I mean, who could have seen that coming?
Nobody,
right? The whole point was to talk about how the voting system was hacked, and it ended up starting super, super late because, well, why don't we hear from Lindell himself? Why did it start super late?
This was attacked, the whole technology was attacked. We expected that, but we do have a backup plan. It'll be probably another 5 minutes. And I want all you guys to know that out there, that this is why, because I need to get the word out. We can't even get the word out to the people that are frankspeech.com because they blocked the thing. But this is part of what I'm going to talk about today. This is the cover-up. This is the absolute cover-up of the worst crime in history. Now, I'll show you over here. You see this data that's running there? That's cyber data from what I've got. Let's see if it's moving. Yeah, it's not rotating yet, but that'll go in an endless stream for days.
There are 4 grown men on that stage behind him. They agreed to be part of that. 4 grown men. That's it. I mean, that's really the only takeaway. There's 4 grown men on that stage
That's your main
who are
takeaway.
listening to a lunatic say lunatic things, and they're like, yeah, no, we've chosen to spend our free time here.
Yeah, so we had a technical difficulty last night on Old School, and now I realize what it is: packet captures.
It was the packet captures.
Yeah,
for
of
sure.
course. It was. I'm just trying to figure out which government tapped into Old School, because this is a very dangerous podcast. So I've got my money on Russia. Okay, he said it. He said it's Russia. No, just calm down. I'm kidding. Okay, but for him, he thinks it's perfectly normal. He has a tech problem because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, right? And he immediately thinks, is it China or Venezuela?
He's selling pillows.
That's what he does. He sells pillows
He's
for a
selling
living.
pillows, guys. He talked about his promo code in the context of the symposium, like multiple times. He wants to sell pillows. That's it. We live in America. Do we not know this yet? We live in America. Everything is about selling something. Either selling yourself, selling your product, selling whatever. You're just selling pillows.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all this is. That's what Mike Lindell does. He sells pillows, people.
You know what Mike Lindell is? He's Big Pillow. Okay, we got problems with big oil. In Florida, they're constantly dealing with big sugar. Now we got Big Pillow.
He's a big dork, that's for sure. And here's one other fun moment from this cyber symposium where he wanted to weigh in on
symposium.
Let's watch what he has to say about Brazil's president.
We have the president's son, Eduardo, coming here. Bolsonaro, if I say it right, how do you say it? Bolsonaro. Yeah.
Bolsonaro.
Okay, Bolsonaro. He's going to be coming here to speak.
Yeah, no, he nailed it. That was great. Great. Bolsonaro's family member coming to speak at the cyber symposium. I'm sure he was great.
We got this guy coming, Eduardo. Okay, is it Bossa something? Okay, Bossa Nova, I don't know, something.
Does learning Bolsonaro's name help him sell pillows? And if the answer is no, he's not gonna go out of his way to learn Bolsonaro's name or who Bolsonaro even is.
Look, I struggle with pronouncing names. This is a well-known fact. And in fact, one of our members said they changed their name based on one of my mispronunciations.
That was a bad decision.
Well, I love
you guys.
I love you
don't
for
do that.
Okay, but if you're like, your big guest at the symposium is Bolsonaro's cousin's aunt's sister, okay? And Bolsonaro's not that hard. I can do Bolsonaro. I think you can manage Bolsonaro, right? Is it Bossa? Okay.
Well, I mean,
and
to
stop,
be fair,
and stop at some point and ask.
Intellectual heavyweights do mispronounce Bolsonaro's name on a regular basis. People like Dave Rubin, who called him Bolsonaro. So,
is it a right-wing thing? Is that you guys struggle with that particular name? Anyways, look, I think what happened is, it's pretty simple. Okay, yeah, I could just see him saying, "Damn it, Jim, I don't do tech, I do pillows."
Oh, he does pillows.
Yeah, there's some chance, Mike, that you should have stuck with the pillows. You might be a little over your. No, it's.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because they're down.
Oh, we're here all week. Fortunately or unfortunately.
Pillows with feathers.
Oh my God! If we keep this up, he might be mad at us, and we'd have a pillow fight. Look, you don't want to mess with Big Pillow. You never know what happens.
You never know what happens. You know what? I'm really proud that I got to share my expert analysis and commentary on this story with you all.
Yeah, well, when you told me we were going to break down a symposium, I didn't know it was going to be this intellectual. Right wing, come on. It's like, look, guys, if it looks like we're laughing at you, we kind of are. Right?
Oh, we should work with the right wing.
Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. We love you. You'll get better. You'll get better. Okay. Get a good night's sleep. But
blanket
seriously,
and a binky.
Yeah,
sure.
Guys, this is not a symposium. There are no packet captures. They went to court 60 times. There's no evidence. We love you. Get some help. That's all. Okay.
That's all.
Okay, we are out of time. Go to, Anna was talking about getting out during coronavirus. Great news. You can go on a trip right now. You can go on a trip to Woznia. Yes. Wonderful land, okay? So 10 o'clock Eastern at twitch.tv/TYT, okay? And then, check out Anna's interview with Aaron that airs, all the interviews air at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. That's right before the Young Turks. Don't miss those. Some of those are mediocre, but some of them are great, okay? Like amazing debates with conservatives and I found some old neocons to beat up on.
Nice, fun.
And then last night, and I hope you saw it today, but if you remember, you check it out anytime, and you're all members. A great interview with a young woman who put together an amazing organization and got over 500 people elected across the country. Amazing story. So check out the interviews, especially Anna's interview with Aaron tomorrow. All right, much love. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Can't forget.
Yeah.